All right, good evening. The time being 7 p.m. on February 4th, 2019. All members of the planning board being present, call this meeting to order. All right, first item on the agenda item A, is approval of minutes for January 7th, 2019 and January 28th, 2019.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve the minutes with both dates. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, moving on to agenda item B, committee reports, administrative actions. Anyone have any committee reports they'd like to make at this time?
No.
No?
Set?
Yep. Mr. Riley?
Yes, the elementary school board will be going for their decision on the 13th next week, and that will determine the actual reimbursement.
Okay,
So,
very good.
news to follow.
Ballpark number they were looking at, I know it's been in there, but figure just say it since we're in there. They're hoping
It depends on the reimbursement, in the 50% range. It could go as high as 52, but based upon the lead certificate and so forth.
Okay, very good. All right, anyone else? No?
No.
All right. One reminder, just for everybody's purposes in the audience, the administrative actions are not public hearings. So we're not going to take public comments on anything that's in the administrative action section. So while you're welcome to listen to anything that's said about them, obviously it's a public meeting, just so you know that's not out of the ordinary. We don't call people up or have people come up for administrative action comments, okay? All right, so with that, we'll move on to agenda item B2, which is concept plan 355 Main Street. 355 Main Street. State your names for the record. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Plunkett, representing the owner of the parcel. The principal of the ownership company is James Andella, who is here with me tonight. If I may, Mr. Chairman, if I could just hand out, these might be cleaner versions than what you have there.
That's okay.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Mr. Chairman, is there anything different with this plan?
That's what
than
I'm
the
just
one we
looking at
have?
myself.
I think the only thing different that when we faxed something over, there was like a handwritten 4.5 a clerical error on one of the original documents, and so just it was a fairly insignificant change, but I also thought that these might be, I wasn't certain about the clarity of what was sent over by the email.
All right, good enough.
So other than that, it's basically the same presentation. And this is looking, as an informal presentation to get some feedback from the board. This is the site that you probably remember very well. At one point, there was a proposal to put affordable housing development on the site, and that is not moving forward at this time. This is, though, a version of the development build-out of the site showing the in access to the property that is through an area, a curb cut that has been approved by Mass DOT. The curb cut as approved and of record, and I believe you may have a copy of that also, that was forwarded to the town. that was based upon the original presentation of all residential. However, the terms of the curb cut are such that it allows for modification. The engineer, the traffic engineer, are very comfortable and confident that the use as presented here will line up very well with the criteria that allowed the curb cut as shown on this plan here based on the prior use, and that a modification would be something that would be in order to allow this type of development. And basically, the concept here is to utilize this fairly significant parcel of land along the Route 38 corridor. This would be in keeping with some of the master plans that the town has gone through in terms of what they want to do in terms of developing this type of commercial site, especially in the proximity to that 495 interstate exchange, just a short distance down towards the Lowell line. And what we're looking at here is the potential with these 4 buildings. Each one of them would be consistent or in line with allowed uses within the commercial zone. That we would have a MFD 55, which is a allowed commercial use by a special permit of the planning board. That would be on the pad in the rear. That we would have in the back another pad for retail development. And then in the front, the thought and expectation is that this would be, and there's a fairly strong indication from other people who have been involved in the project, that these would be very prime locations for the type of national high-scale commercial tenant, such as a high-scale steakhouse, the drive-through with a national drive-through coffee shop that everyone can't seem to get enough of. And not necessarily, the coffee shop that is every 5 feet. As I'm looking, yeah, I won't name names, but I'm looking at one right now. So, it's a situation that it could be very developed, a very nice build-out. It would be tiered because of the topography. There would be some retaining walls, so it would be a tiered development of the property. The back properties or structures would be utilizing the foundations in the backside of that building for a certain element of a retaining wall also. Then you would see a retaining wall going along that, the entryway and a retaining wall along the front. Parking underneath both the front commercial building and the back residential building. So you would have significant parking capacity. You would have a upscale commercial development with the residential component. It would meet a number of the factors that have been identified as points of interest that the town should be trying to attract and bring in for the development of the Route 38 corridor. So it's something that the owner and the development team is very, in one sense, excited about in terms of it could be a great potential for all parties involved. And we're looking for some feedback from the board.
All right. Start with Mr. Fowler.
Oh, goody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I use that loosely. Thank you for your proposal. I know it's similar to what you had before, but is a lot dissimilar.
Right.
I have a couple of questions about the pads. The pad on the left where it says commercial building, that's 1.5 stories, so that's your restaurant. That's pretty self-explanatory.
Yep.
The one out front, Could be a Starbucks.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Dunkin's is oversaturated in this town, so anyways, but that's beside the point. The four-story residential building, that's garage under, and I see you also have garage under the restaurant.
Yes, yeah, so that would provide 26 spaces for the restaurant. And there's also a potential that front building could be a combination use, you know, a portion of it being for a bank, and then, you know, an upscale, but
Sure.
that'll depend on the
Nothing's
marketing
cast in stone.
results and, you know, who's interested in what they're looking for.
Very good. I am still concerned, although if you say the state isn't, I know part of the state was telling one of the people we all know who works for the state that they thought it was a all residential site.
Well, the initial application, certainly the process started when that was the intent.
Absolutely right.
So, but, you know, again, it is not uncommon for a site of this nature that you start the development process, you get the permit, and then you look at the, you know, the actual intended build-out or use. You get feedback from brokers, you get feedback from other people, you get feedback from the town in regards to a 40B project, and then you say, okay, this would be an appropriate and very good use of the site. And the process of getting that curb cut permit, you know, is inherent in that is the understanding and expectation that things can change. And it's, you know, but Mr., I'm going to, our Hazavadian, thank you. Mr. Hazavadian has looked at this, you know, site with the project now, with the anticipated setup as shown here. And also Mr. Hammer, you know, with the engineering, who has had, you know, he's the one that was the main contact with the Mass Highway. And they feel very comfortable that, you know, the modification process is not unusual, and that this would very well fit in with the analysis that Mass DOT did with the initial approval of the curb cut.
Let me ask you a question. The property to the right, the Golan property, the single-family house on the
Yeah.
hill,
Yep.
I understand that's for sale. Is that an interest of yours?
No, it's been sold.
Oh, it has been sold, okay. So is,
Nothing to do with me, sir.
I'm sorry?
Nothing to do with me.
Okay. Well, it would have been better if it was. Because in the conversation I had with the state, we talked about a deceleration lane going into your property, which should make your turn off the inside lane a lot safer. But you can't do it because you're right up to the lot line, and you can't do that in front of someone else's lot.
Well, yeah, again, it would be the, you know, the engineering, the analysis, you know, and DOT has, you know, this took you know, there was a significant amount of time, money, and effort going back and forth to come up with this plan as presented here, in terms of that's what they said was acceptable and what they would want for the access to this site, so.
Mr. Chairman? Sorry, Mr. Fowler. We had our entranceway, I think it was 98 feet towards Wilmington.
right.
They moved us over there. Mass Highway did.
That's right.
Mass Highway moved us over there. That's where they wanted it. We are currently, in this print in front of you, we're at 15% lot coverage. We're allowed in this zone 30%. Also, it took 11 months to get that permit. And we had to submit to them all the drainage for this whole site, and they went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they gave us our permit.
Well, will you be revisiting the state again with a final plan? Jim?
The permit would have to be modified to reflect the use as presented here, certainly, yeah. And again, that's not a surprise, it's not unexpected, and it's not considered a major, threshold to get over.
I'll just hit upon a couple of other things. One, if you have an accident in the intersection of your driveway, that means no one can come and go into that property, right?
Well, you've got pretty much, you basically got like three width
3 lanes.
going up to, and even at that turning point there, I think that it's larger than, because you've got 24 feet up at the smallest point when you take the turn. So there's, if there's questions about that, certainly there could be further discovery, but you've got 3 lanes at the
If you had
front.
an accident at that intersection at Route 38 in your driveway, when cars have an accident, they don't stay in lane. They'll be covering 2 or 3 lanes. So there's a possibility, plus with people out there, first responders working, there'd be no way for anybody to get in or out of that site. I asked the state if they thought it would be a good idea to have a locked gate entrance.
Yeah, and there's
on the
potential
curb
for
up
that,
here.
yeah.
Well, you don't show it, so.
No, because in terms of that, this is showing, something like that would not be an access, a public access to the site.
No, it's not public access.
No, but certainly the site would be very well adapted to take into account the needs of the, any feedback from, first responders, fire, police, ambulance, and certainly there is, potential site for other access for first responders.
That's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. Looking forward to the final plan.
Mr. Delaney?
The question is, would you run, like Mr. Fowler was talking about, the decel lane, did you run it by the state? Could they make room for a decel lane here?
No, this is, the plan does not provide for a decel lane but again, this is the layout as approved by Mass DOT, having gone through exhaustive, again, what was it, 11 months? Or
11 months, yeah.
11 months, exhaustive 11-month analysis, review.
2 gray hairs.
And they did not call for a decel lane there.
The next thing is, I don't see any place marked out for snow storage.
Oh, yeah.
There's, significant green space area that when the final plan comes in, there will be details relative to all, complying with any, specific details such as that on site that will show compliance with the requirements of the bylaws.
The original plan for this property was completely residential, if I'm not mistaken, at that particular time.
There was a proposal for this site that included 4 residential structures, but, based upon the results of the initial process, that was scrapped, and this is now the proposal of building out this location, this site.
But at that particular time, the big question was the in and outs in the back, especially if somebody had to take a left into this property,
Yeah.
okay, going towards the wall. If this person has to stop 5 minutes to let 50 cars go by, the traffic is going to back up all the way down to the gate.
Well, the Department of Transportation, Mass DOT, has looked at all, so there has been extensive studies, analysis, calculations, and everything else, and this is what has been approved as an access to this site.
Okay, but with the commercial space, the donut shop, the commercial building, the restaurant, now what you've done is you've increased the amount of in and outs going into this property.
Well, there will be a report with analysis of the site with the proposed use that is prepared by the traffic engineer, and that will be part of the process. That'll be a submittal to Mass DOT for the modification to allow the permit, the access permit to accommodate the proposed use. That is not in hand right now, but it is certainly, like, again, not unanticipated and not considered a barrier or hurdle that can't be taken care of.
See, the situation is, where it was just residential, there was a problem at that particular point in time with the in and outs of this property. Now what we've done is, with the restaurant and with the coffee shop, to increase the amount of people going in and out on a regular basis. Okay, it's one thing if a homeowner comes home at 4:30 and got one car.
Yeah.
We were trying to deal with one car at a time. Now we're trying to deal with a lot of cars that are gonna go in and out, left and right. And the thing is, I just don't see like how this is going to work with the traffic. I mean, we were lucky enough to have DOT increase the road to like a 3-lane road or a 4-lane road there. And that's just barely handling the traffic that I see now. By putting all in the middle of it all, to take this property and put all these cars coming in and out, I just don't see it.
Yeah.
But it's, I guess it's something we can look at
Yeah.
when we get the final plan, but it's something that I would hope that you would consider. Another thing, this 24 feet with the turns and all that, has that been approved by the fire department? You're giving the
yeah.
fire department
Yeah.
this right angle turn with cars that are gonna be parked, okay? And you're giving them 24 feet to make that swing to get into this property.
Yeah. I believe,
I'd like to see the,
Sure,
something from the
Yeah,
fire department that says they can get in and out there.
yeah, that would be part of the, that's understood.
Mr. Chairman, this is the same layout we had before, and we have a traffic thing, a template, they call it.
Just, I mean,
Okay.
just for everybody's,
Yeah.
again,
Sure.
this is conceptual.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
isn't like the plan that
Sure.
would come in
Yeah.
in an official hearing. So there will be things missing, but like Mr. Delaney said, it's important to point them out.
Sure.
You guys know why they're not there.
Yeah.
In some cases, we know why they're not there, but not everybody's going to understand when we bring them up why they're not here, but that they are things that are going to be important, snow storage, is it going to be compliant for safety vehicles and that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't get past us without that anyways.
Sure.
When you get to the official hearing, but it's still important to bring up, so that's just for everybody's FYI.
And certainly, I can understand and appreciate the questions relative to what the concern is, and that we will address those concerns. There will be, traffic analysis, calculations by the traffic engineer, and, excuse me, that will be part of a final submittal to show, that it's not taken lightly, and it will be analyzed, and it will be shown that, this will be consistent with what Mass Highway is expecting and will allow.
Go ahead.
I think I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
I just, the traffic study that they're going to do, it constitutes so many ins and outs. But common sense says to me that at 4:30 at night, go down that road and try to take a left into that property. That's what I'm thinking about. And I'm thinking that the car goes through the traffic and back up one way. If they don't let the car go, you've now eliminated one of the lanes that's on Route 38 in front of that complex okay? You've eliminated one of the lines for traffic, which we put there to get the traffic to flow better. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will reserve most of my comments till I see more plans, but I guess one of my main concerns is that, I mean, you're bringing in a number of retail spots here in this development. We have a lot of retail spots in town that still aren't filled. You know, and I know a few of them down on Main Street, but, so, just to bring that to your attention.
Yep, I mean,
So-
and again, understanding what the concern is, however, the location here with the proximity to the 495 is going to be a major magnet to not only filling these commercial spaces, but also the potential for attracting the type of commercial tenants that the town has been looking for to improve the Route 38 corridor, so. And the economics, you know, of development is such that, you know, you're not going to put the money in unless there's expectation of
Understood.
development.
I understand that completely, and just to bring it to your attention that
Sure.
I think the developers down on Main Street thought the same thing, but obviously they're still vacant, so. All set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Rad.
Thank you. And I will echo the other board members' concerns. A couple, one major concern I have is, as you stated, this initially started as a residential project. DOT approved it as a residential project. I think the incorporation of the retail drive-through coffee shop will change, in my opinion, it changes the traffic and potentially could change the decision of DOT. So I understand it's a common practice, but I think DOT needs to look at this a little closer as the number of cars coming in and out. This is now 16, 18 hours a day compared to the early morning rush cars leaving for work, mid-afternoon traffic coming in, and then late evening coming in. So now you have not only a residential component, which you have that morning, afternoon, potential evening, now you're throwing in retail, a coffee shop, and as you talk about Starbucks, if you've seen any Starbucks in the area, as you used as a reference, that there is traffic. Any Starbucks I've ever seen, there is congestion. And some of the largest Starbucks in the area do have traffic concerns. And I think on 38 is a bigger concern. That location you have across from the entrance into that side street into TD Waffle area, as Mr. Fowler stated, you have an accident in that area at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That is shut down miles in each direction. Emergency vehicles coming from the center of town. Now you're looking at responding from potentially the North Street side, coming down 12 Road and coming up over the hill to get to that location. I think that needs to be looked at closely. I think the town needs to look at that from the engineering department as well as DOT. So I look forward to the full set of plans, but I don't think that, as this stated, is it permission for a residential, granted permission for a residential driveway. I don't see any permission for a commercial driveway, or a multi-use driveway in this town.
Yeah.
So, and I understand, you waited 11 months for this, and I think it's going to be another task to get this approved through as a mixed use and commercial if possible. And like I said, I look forward to the other, the full set of plans coming in. Thank you.
All right, so my turn. All right, so, I mean, I definitely get, the comments on the other board members because, what this was approved for, which is great that you have that in hand, but obviously there's something different here now being presented, so it will require a new look from them, and they may move things around again, and obviously that'll affect any plans that come in as final set not final set, but as an official set for a hearing, if you get some other advising from them that now because there's retail, they want to push the driveway back down. I have no idea.
Yeah, no,
But that's for
I
you guys to
think,
deal
I
with.
think the preliminary discussion points, that there has been some discussion, and the expectation is that this is not going to
Right.
move from the location it's at right
And that's
now.
what I think we thought before, was that was kind of where it was going to get pushed to from where it was
Yeah.
originally being proposed on the 40B project. But for my purposes, only because I think a lot of the other members have hit some of the, the more right-in-our-face thing from what's presented here. I would like to just take one step back from that. The original residential proposal, how many units was that?
77,
That was more, I knew how many it was, I just wanted to hear it out loud. This one has how many units?
32.
32, okay. So I'm loath to making pieces of property unusable in any sense, in that if one time you bring it in as a residential thing and people don't like that, and then you bring it in as more of a retail thing, after people said, maybe this should be retail, not residential, and then complain about it when it's residential. It reminds me of the property that's up by Ames Pond, that it's big, no matter what comes in, at that time, we don't like it. So that's why it sits empty forever, because when it's residential, nobody wants residential. When it's commercial, nobody wants commercial. When it's some sort of retail thing, nobody wants retail.
Yeah.
I'm loath to tell people they can't use their property for any purpose. That doesn't sit well with me, it doesn't make sense to me. When we discussed this property before, one of the biggest concerns was we did not want access off Astle. Okay, so that cuts down in the ability to put traffic anyplace else but Main Street, if you want to abide by people's wish not to have it on Astle, which this does, with the exception of, as Mr. Fowler pointed out, I don't think there's any way you can't have at least some sort of emergency access, whether it's strictly emergency vehicles or, again, if there was an accident, they got to shift people out of there somehow. So that's going to have to be incorporated somewhere on here, but not as a normal throughway, that's fine. The idea that if there's an accident, it's going to, clog things up. Well, if there's an accident out in front of job lots at that light, you can't get by there at a normal time either unless you go into the driveway, basically, of the storage place to go around a car. If you don't make the first left at the light change, you're waiting. It's like that up down 38. So, just because it's going to make traffic difficult, it didn't stop any of the other businesses from coming. You know what I mean? So, I don't want to make it as the absolute course. If there's an accident, it's going to screw things up. If there's an accident anywhere, it screws things up. But, and again, I think to remind people that at one point there was this 40B project being possibly proposed here, of which this board would have had no power whatsoever, first of all, to do anything, to ask for anything, because it would not have gone before us. Also, the town is left in a position where they can't really ask for anything because it basically can just simply be done without the town stopping it. That hasn't changed to this point. So again, when we consider projects as they come in, yes, we have to look at what's in front of us, but I think we have to remember too what could be in front of us, or in this case, not even in front of us, in front of other boards in the town who are going to have very little say in what happens. So, while I'm sure there's definitely things that are going to have to be looked at on this project, specifics, whether or not the way these roads, the access, the way they're internally working and all those things, I don't want to dismiss it out of hand when, we basically said no to the 77-unit project. That's how it got pushed towards a 40B presentation, or a LIP actually originally. It never quite made it to the 40B, but the LIP proposal is sort of the 40B light.
Yeah.
Because we said the 77 was too much. We just didn't think it was going to work. Some of the concerns that people have had about some of the more recent approvals the board has done is because there's been such a small portion of commercial mixed with the residential. And in some cases, as Mr. Fratelli pointed out, some of those commercial spaces aren't filled, but all the resident spaces are. This project here, the density of residential units versus the commercial units is not like those. This is heavier to the retail side than it is to the residential side as an overall project. I understand the concerns for this, where this property is located. However, it's zoned if I'm reading this correctly. This is all zoned commercial, correct?
Correct, yeah. Every use is shown on here is a permitted use in the...
You know, the commercial uses in and of themselves is really what we seem to have wanted there anyways. That's how it was zoned. The residential portion is sort of a combination into it, but it's a much reduced from the last one. You know, again, it's the petitioner's job to sell this. I just want to point out that, you know, there's a broader spectrum of reasons, you know, we have to consider what gets presented because there are other things at play as well, you know, on these. So that's why I wanted to point those out. Again, the other members have pointed out a lot of the specifics. I mean, I have some concerns about the way you come through past the coffee shop, and it's going to force everybody to kind of come that same way, whether they're coming in and out of the restaurants or the residential, that there isn't another sort of maybe cutoff to get you into that other part of the parking lot that may be necessary to, you know, so everybody's not funneled through one spot all the time. You know, it may cause you to move some spaces somewhere, I don't know, but it's something to look at, just as a way to get people into the other portion of the parking lot without having to take everybody by the same place. That's something that I thought looked concerning, just because, again, the bottleneck of it, when you've got the, you know, if you have the coffee shop at the front and people trying to get in and out, you know, you don't want everybody queuing up in the same place. But, you know, those are sort of my preliminary thoughts. Again, I think what these things are going to look like will be important. We've done that every time we've had a project. We've told people we want renderings of what the building is going to look like, so when you bring in, if you bring in an official, my apologies, if you bring in an official presentation, obviously that's something, bring it in up front, because it's going to be important, because this is something people are going to see coming right down Main Street. So we're going to care how it looks too, and what people can see, you know, 360 on these things, from whether you're on Astor Street or Main Street. But those are my thoughts.
I think to that point, you know, this is an opportunity to have something that is very attractive at a very key point along the Route 38 corridor. And again, accept and understand what, you know, all the points that you're making. Again, a crucial part of this development relative to the attraction to commercial tenants is that proximity to 495, which, you know, obviously, as you go further down the Route 38 corridor, you get further away from that point of attraction to these commercial tenants, so.
All right, any of the other members with any further comments,
Mr. Chairman?
questions?
Just one question. So it's all 55 and over, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, under the commercial zone, the MFD 55 is an allowed use with a special permit from the planning board.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is the only part of Main Street, Route 38 in Tewksbury, that has 4 or 5 lanes. Everything else is bottlenecked up, 1 lane each way. This half mile off 495 was developed for that reason.
And because I always try to do this, you know, I'll help you and then I'm going to hit you. But at the same time, you have to recognize, like everybody else knows, even with all those lanes, you know what it looks like and what happens there at certain times of day, how congested it can be. So, I mean, it does have to be taken into consideration.
Sure.
It's true, it is wider than a lot of other parts of 38, but at the same time, it's also very busy and can get backed up. So we do have to consider that. I mean, everybody's seen how it backs up from the light. You know what I mean? Going back towards Walmart. So, I mean, we have to consider it. I mean, as Mr. Delaney pointed out, if you want to take that left, you do rely somewhat on the kindness of strangers at some point to be able to make that left, as you do in a lot of places on Main Street when you want to take a left, whether it's one side or the other.
Well, the entire Route 38 corridor going down into Wilmington, you have significant
So, I mean,
development
but
along.
at the same time.
Exactly.
It's
Sure,
gonna
but there are
have to happen.
concerns,
Like,
yeah,
we
you have to
we have to
address
think
them.
about,
Yeah.
you have 2 lanes, but if those 2 lanes are never being used as 2 lanes because everything's clogged up, you don't really have 2 anymore. So, it's a trade-off. Like I said, you're right, it's thicker in that area, but at the same time, it's also very busy at certain times of the day anyways, so.
The only other thing, I'm sorry,
Did you have, was that it?
That was it, yeah.
there was an A&R plan for perimeter description of the property that was submitted. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's later on or if that could be.
Yeah, you're down at the bottom, like,
Oh.
bring it back up, we'll take everything in order, so.
Okay.
Do we need to be here for that?
Yeah, we should be.
All right,
Okay.
everybody else all set? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the feedback.
All right, moving on to agenda item B3, which is approval not required, Livingston Street, Saunders Recreational Area, Tewksbury Hospital Cemetery.
Do we just have a memo for that?
Yeah, okay. So we don't have anybody coming in for that. We received a memo from Assistant Town Manager Steve Sadwick. Is that it?
No, that was removed.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, that was the one that got removed. I apologize. I was thinking that was the,
I thought that was,
No, it's a memo, right? We didn't see a memo, did we?
yeah, I got the right here, yeah. The numbers changed because the agenda changed.
okay, so.
So Ross, Fraser, and Winterberry. like,
Yeah, so
we're
3 and 4
skipping
came off.
It just got,
Yeah.
okay.
And now we're down on.
So we're at 5.
Number 5.
Old 5, new
Okay.
3. So if anybody has an old copy, it's B5 and B3 today.
She sent it on email.
Yeah, today. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so we just have a memo.
Okay, so for anybody who's, just so you have a little background on this, what this is a approval not required plan. The board, you know, if it meets the requirements, basically the board signs off on the plan. What the plan is being used for is to further the transfer from the state to the town of Tewksbury for the Livingston Street recreational area. Okay, so, open up the board. Mr. Ryder?
I do not have any questions on this, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Vitalia?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fowler?
All set.
All right, I will jump to myself in just a second and say I'm all set, and then we'll let Mr. Delaney weigh in, and then we'll go forward.
Mr. Chairman, how long have you been waiting for this to happen? A long time.
It's a long time. A lot of people have worked on this.
My goodness.
Former members of the board have worked on this a lot. A lot of people in town have worked on this. As with many things with the state, you need to cross a lot of Ts, dot a lot of Is, and talk to a lot of people.
I know Mr. Feingold and Mr. Robertson, our state reps, have been on top of this project, trying to get it done to the governor's office as well. Hopefully it doesn't take another 10 years.
Mr. Delaney, any thoughts on any concerns with the A&R plan for Livingston?
No, I'm all set.
Very good. All right. With that, what is the pleasure of the board? Anyone? Endorse the A&R plan?
I'll make a motion to endorse.
All right, so a motion to endorse the A&R plan. Motion made in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Do we have that? Okay, good. So we'll sign that before we leave tonight. All right, that brings us to agenda item old B6, current B4, which is an A&R plan for 15 Astle Street.
Never seen this.
Been slow on the take here tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Change the numbers around a little bit just to mess with everybody.
This is simply a perimeter plan, easy for me to say, for a parcel of land that we're just asking for approval not required endorsement. You know, it certainly has the frontage, and that's basically it.
Is there a need, I mean, what was the reason for this?
I believe from Mr. Hammer, truthfully, I think he just wanted to have a current perimeter plan showing, you know, all the details of the dimensions of the parcel.
Okay. So, I mean, it ultimately just amounts to an updated plan.
Yeah, it's just the surveyor has stamped it saying that this is a true and accurate.
Mr. Ty?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Delaney? Mr. Fowler? All set. Mr. Ryder?
All set.
I am all set as well. All right. With that, what is the pleasure of the board for this A&R plan?
Motion to endorse the plan.
All right, I have a motion to endorse.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. All right, all set.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to agenda item C, 71 Term Terrace, Family Suite Special Permit. I have a motion to waive the public reading.
So moved.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. So if you just state your name for the record, the floor will be yours.
My name is Matt Maffioni. I'm a homeowner at 71 Term Terrace.
Okay?
I'm applying for the family suite. My father and fiance will be moved, will be moving into the family suite area with my wife and my young child, 10 months old.
Okay. Start with Mr. Ryder.
I do not have any questions as of now. It met all the guidelines.
Okay.
Answer my question, who's moving in, but thank you.
Mr. Delaney.
First of all, I've been down and talked to the neighbors about this gentleman. He's done a hell of a job taking over the house that he has taken over. Everybody talked very, very highly of them, and they would like, any of the neighbors down there don't have a problem with what this gentleman's trying to do. The question that I have, I guess, is the door. Is that going to be like the front door, or does that door go to, on your plan here?
Can I stop, officer?
Sure.
That's my front. That is my front door, and it has split level access.
Okay, it's going to go down and up?
Yes.
That's the front door?
Yep.
Okay.
One entrance on the front of the house.
Is the property on sewer?
Excuse me? Property is on sewer.
Okay, with, all set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also went by the property. Do you have an open permit there now?
We do.
Okay,
We're remodeling a couple bathrooms.
okay, good. I mean, as you know, once we approve this process, the building commissioner will come down and do all the final walkthrough with you as far as all the requirements and so forth and so on.
Absolutely.
But he's probably been in the house already, so
I'm sure
it's gonna be
he
fine.
has.
But, and we always usually endorse these because it's a great thing, keeping the family there and taking care of them as well. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I'm all set.
All right. Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having seen a lot of these and built some of them, a little bit of this confuses me. When you look at the first floor, which is the half floor, half of it's below grade.
Yes, sir.
Right. The part in the back where there is nothing, is that there now?
Sorry.
Right here.
That,
Yeah, take this.
sorry. Came straight from work. I didn't bring it home. The rear area, there between the bathroom and the bedroom. Is that what you're referring to? That blank area? That's a boiler room that has the hot water tank.
I mean, this open area here where there's nothing, no back walls?
Correct. There is a back wall there. That is where the hot water tank boiler are.
So why is that not enclosed as part of the downstairs area?
I don't know, sir.
Who drew the plan?
I received these upon purchase of the home.
How many square feet is what you have in black? The outside area?
It says that it's 959 square feet, sir.
So if you add the area that's not enclosed with anything, what will the total area be?
Roughly 1,000.
It's 959 square feet?
That's what it states there, sir. I actually don't believe that is accurate. I believe it's less than that.
I just don't want you to have a hard time with the building inspector, because when you come back, you have to show all areas in that floor, what they're for, and everything. If some of it's common area, you can do that. But that area in the back, I mean, I said, why is there a foundation there?
There is.
Joins the right side with the left side?
There is, yes.
So that should be on the plan.
It should be.
Yeah, so if you add that area is about 12 by 12. That's 144 square feet, more than the 959. So that's 1,100 square feet,
Okay.
at least. So is that going to work for you?
It's not going to make anything different for myself.
Okay. Might make it different with the building inspector, though.
It's a maximum of 1,000.
You can only have 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
So in other words, you're showing 959, you're adding 144 or thereabouts, you're going to be way over to 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
So I don't know how you're going to do it unless you call the front entrance. Is that going to be the front entrance for the first and the second floor?
The front entrance is a common area.
Thank you. You're learning. That's good. I'm glad. Just don't forget that phase and make sure, do your math,
Yes, sir.
get the areas, and then show that as a common area.
That will probably offset roughly,
Yeah.
that common area will
Yeah.
Do
roughly
you know what the
offset
square
the
footage of
utility.
the second floor is?
Second floor, it says that's 1,219 square feet.
Yeah, so that's where you're gonna, I mean, I'm looking at it, I mean, I'm guessing that the footprint's the same for both floors.
Yep.
So you're gonna have to check the numbers for the spaces, what's common and what's not.
Yeah.
Work that out, discuss it with the building inspector. I mean, I'm suspecting, we'll approve this, but we're gonna approve it, obviously, as always, subject to the building inspector is the one who's gonna sign off on it.
Okay.
We're just telling you can do it. He's the one who's gonna tell you whether you're gonna do it.
Okay.
So, you all set, Mr. Fowler?
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to scare you.
No,
I'm
I
just giving you the facts.
appreciate it.
And I didn't, looking at this for about an hour last night, not last night, I was watching a football game. I said, something's wrong here, and it's, because there were no dimensions on anything in this, so.
Okay.
It was kind of guessing, but that's fine,
I have a question.
yes.
Would a heating system be a common area that provides heat to the whole house?
A portion, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Determine a portion if it's one
Again,
common.
it's not for us to say.
Okay.
It's gonna be for the building inspector to
It's up
say.
to the building.
Washer and dryer, stuff
Yeah,
like
when you
that?
guys, when you guys discuss it, I mean,
Okay.
again, like we said, we don't have an exact number here.
Yep.
So we're going off,
Yeah.
we'll approve it
Yeah.
as you're allowed to do it, or we're telling you can try to do it, I guess is the way to say it. And then whether you actually get to do it, you'll run the numbers with the
Building.
building department,
Yeah.
and, that determination will be made by them.
Oh.
We don't decide what is or isn't common area.
Okay.
One other.
Yes, sir.
The laundry, it doesn't say laundry room with the bathroom on the second floor?
Bathroom on the second
With a
floor.
funny angle on the wall?
On the wall there, yep.
Yeah, is that laundry room going to be the only laundry room in the house?
No, there's going to be laundry down in the first floor.
Okay, so I'm looking for another common area.
Yep.
All right, all right.
Floor or basement?
Good luck.
Basement or first floor?
They refer to
Floor one is
Okay.
is also referred to as basement.
Yeah.
Floor one, actually, the basement.
Yeah, right.
Right. Okay.
All right, I'm all set. Nothing for me to ask. What is the, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, it's a public hearing. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on this? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to close the hearing?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. As to the family suite special permit.
Motion to endorse motion to approve,
All right, motion to approve.
subject to an okay from the building inspector.
Right. All right, so I've got the motion made and seconded.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you, ladies and
Good luck,
gentlemen. Have a good night.
All right.
Okay, not a problem.
Moving on to agenda item D, 333 Main Street, a modification of site plan special permit, continued from 1/28/19.
Look at this. Oh, cantilever. Oh, here we go. This is good. I'm glad. Steve, you wouldn't believe how many of these I saw in Florida.
John, if you'd state your name for the record, the floor will be yours.
Good evening. Perry Petrillo, architect for Walmart.
at this location. The application before you is for implementation of online grocery pickup. Does everybody understand how that works, or do you need an overview on online?
Let's pretend that we don't, so that if anybody in the audience doesn't, we'll have explained it.
Sounds good. So online grocery pickup is being implemented across the nation and will be a standard, hopefully, in most of their stores. It's an app-driven scenario where you'll go onto your app and basically order your groceries. You can only order groceries. You can't order general merchandise. You can't order a TV, tires, so on and so forth. General merchandise, grocery items and household cleaning items. General things you'd find in a grocery establishment. Once on the app, you'll make your selections. You will then pick a time for pickup. Generally, it's a 4-hour window prior that you'll order, so most tend to order the evening before for the morning or that morning for the afternoon. The way they've slotted it is basically each space for the pickup has roughly a 15-minute window. So if you wanted to pick up at 9 o'clock, you could pick the 9 o'clock slot, but you have a little leeway there till 9:15. If you're running late and you can't get there in time, you can go on your app and change your time. Once at the store for your 9 o'clock pickup, you can either notify them by the app or you can phone them, and the online grocery pickup assistant will notify that you're there to pick up. If you pull in and call, you just tell them what space you're in. If you notify via app, they'll assign you a space. Once there, bless you.
Thank you.
Once there, the associate will bring everything out to the car. It's intended that the customer does not get out of the car. The groceries will come out to the car and be placed in the car for the customer. That's pretty much it. So in most applications, the pickup scenario happens on the grocery side of the store. Unfortunately, in this location, and this is basically an aerial of the store, Main Street out here, north is up. The grocery component is on this side of the store, so there is no access or ability to install it on that side of the store. So given that we need to locate this within the store, we need an area for marshaling the goods. So this application really is 3 components. It's a minor expansion for the marshaling of the goods, it's the parking component, and then it's the signage. So we're proposing an enclosure here, a little expansion that's roughly 19 by 64. It's 1,216 square feet. It'll be basically the goods marshaling area, so there will be dry goods shelves for dry goods to be stored. There will also be freezers and coolers. So if you ordered milk, ice cream, and vegetables, you will have 3 packages in there that the associate will pick when you get there and bring them out to the car. Average time turnaround is 5 minutes for somebody to pull in, get their groceries, and leave. So the proposal is we'll have a small expansion here. Then we are looking at using spaces in the parking lot right here. So we are actually capturing 13 spaces, which are currently 9.6 by 19 in width and depth, and we're restriping them at a 12-foot wide space, and obviously the depth stays the same at 19. Now, when we stripe them, if you've looked at the drawings, it's a hairpin striping. So there's a 2-foot stripe, hairpin stripe between each space. We found that helps because if you just stripe them at 12 foot with a single line, people tend to sway one way or the other, whereas if you do this, it tends to help leave room between the cars. So if somebody comes in with a van or something like that, there's a little bit more room for accessibility on the car. Of those 10 spaces that we're proposing here, 6 of them will be covered by a canopy structure. The canopy structure is for lack of a better term, it's almost like a tensile structure. It's a steel frame, and then there's actually like a fabric membrane that goes over that. There you go. And if anybody's interested, this is actually the fabric that goes over it. So it does, during the day, emit light through it. There are 4 columns as part of this, and of that, there are 2 spaces between each column, and there is a single downlight underneath each bay. As part of this, we are losing 3 spaces in the parking lot to get from the taking the 13 and going to the 10. And then given our additional square footage that we're adding of 1,216, we calculate that comes out to 6.8 spaces, so we round it up to 7. So total of 10 spaces we are shy of. What we are proposing is on the, I think it's 62510, the approved site plan, there are actually 20 papered spaces around the bend over here that were not striped. So we're proposing to implement 10 of those to make up for those 10 spaces so that we balance out. I think it's a 706 total that was approved with the site plan, and less 20. So that's what was striped, 686. So we're looking to maintain the 686 striped spaces. On our plan, the proposed papered spaces start about here. We are starting 2 back so that we just kind of leave this open a little bit wider here so it doesn't bottle down as much.
Is the intention to make those employee spaces or to encourage?
Encourage, yes. So there is also parking here for employees. So yes, we would kind of group that all together.
I might be wrong, but I feel like I'm fairly confident that that last section of parking there that would be across from your
This here?
outdoor, no, come to the front.
Up here? Yep.
I have a feeling that tends to be some employee parking there. So obviously, in losing this section, the encouragement of those to swing around the back.
Correct.
Would really, I mean, while you're replacing the spaces, if you don't get them to come out back.
Yes.
No one's going to know that.
And for the most part, I did speak to the store manager a little bit. They do enforce it, not heavily during the normal year, but once seasonal comes, they do try to enforce where the employees park. So one other piece of this that was raised by the building commissioner and asked a question was the seasonal. So part of their site plan approval, they've got this, and perfect aerial, right? Shows the seasonal area here that they're using. So what we're proposing to do is, instead of using that area, because the canopy will now be part of that, what we are proposing is to use, right now, currently, it goes from, I think it's from here, all the way across and over here. So we are proposing to basically keep this section here, which I believe was 11 spaces in this direction. And the total that they had encompassed was 16. So we're looking to just maintain the 16 spaces. So we're encompassing this distance here in this direction and cutting down our area. So right now, they are, I believe it was just over 11,000 square feet here, and we're cutting it down to just that over 6,000 square feet. We don't show that on what was submitted because that question came up a little afterwards from the building official. So we would include that on our submission as part of that. The other component to this is our sign. So this is just a color rendering of front elevation. We are adding a pickup sign, we would like to add a pickup sign here, and this is the canopy in the foreground in the parking lot. And then this right here is our new expansion for the marshalling goods. Existing signage on the building is 469.63 square feet, with 4 signs on the building. We're looking to go to 5, which would be 535 square feet. And that sign is internally illuminated.
All right,
Did I miss anything?
go first. Start with Mr. Delaney this time. You made eye contact, that was your mistake, come on.
I should have
It's like an elementary school mistake right there.
Well, first of all, let me say, I think it's a great concept. You know, the elderly people are gonna love it. You know, they go there, they don't have to get out of their car, they don't have to do anything to get their groceries. The only other question I have is the area that you're putting the pickup area into. There was flowers, plants.
We're not touching the existing landscaped area that's there. We're actually behind it. So
Okay.
there's a large concrete sidewalk area. This is the planter right here, and we are actually behind it.
Okay.
So that planter landscaping stays intact.
Okay, I'm all set. Chairman.
Mr. Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you're going to just cover 6 out of the 10 spots with the
6 out of the 10 get covered. There's a total of 10 though, yes.
So why not 10? Just curious.
I guess they found that 6 seems to work, given their timing and need. Inclement weather, it's not all the time, and the canopy structure is sort of this prefabricated structure that works in 6s. So they've looked at, one of the questions I typically get is how do you determine the number of spaces that you're implementing for this? And it usually varies anywhere from 6 to 10. Some get 12 if they're really higher volume. But what they determine it on is what the store currently does for online orders. So if they have a large tendency of customers that are ordering online and picking up at the store, then they're anticipating that many more customers will use the online grocery pickup. The funny thing about the online grocery pickup is they found that it's really not bringing in new customers, it's their customer base that's using it. So they're working backwards from what's happening today to kind of judge what the need could be in the future.
Okay, another question I have for you. So the customer orders it online through the app?
Yes.
So there's no money transferred at all? They just come pick up, it's all paid on?
It's all paid online.
Stuff. Okay.
Correct.
So how many additional vehicles do you expect on a regular basis coming in versus doing the online groceries versus?
That's the funny thing, and that's what I was alluding to. We've been told that it really doesn't change their number of trips to the store because it is their customer. It's not, they found that it's not new or additional customers who are shopping somewhere else who are coming here for this. It's people who have been using the store and their grocery department. Now it's just an ease and a better solution for them.
Okay. So no employees from the store monitor the parking area for people parking in those spots or anything?
Oh, they do.
Okay.
They do, yes. And if the spots are noted or signed specifically for pickup, and if there is somebody parked in there, they will ask them to move.
Just one more question. The hours of this operation?
8 to 8.
8 to 8. Okay, great. Sounds good. Thank you very much. All set, Mr. Chairman.
Very welcome.
Before I move on, just as a clarification on that one, on the 8 to 8, because we have sort of a, I don't know what to call it, almost like a rolling hours at that Walmart, because we've approved them for later hours. They typically only take advantage of it in the holiday season, if I believe I'm correct.
It doesn't change,
Okay,
no.
so it's not seasonal in
No.
any way, it's 8 to 8?
8 to 8, standard.
All right. I mean, not that it makes that much, but I was just...
Right.
Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I just spent 2 weeks out of state, and I saw a lot of this where I was. Not only grocery stores, but Home Depot, Lowe's, other department stores. I would assume, one of the questions that was previously asked was, will this increase your customer base? Well, I think it will at first, until all the others do the same thing. You know,
Mike.
so that way, if someone wants to go to Hannaford's or Market Basket, and it's raining out, well, maybe they're going to call over to Walmart, but
Right. I don't,
sure you're going to see this everywhere.
I'm unaware of if any of your other grocery stores offer this. No, okay.
Down, away from here, yes.
Yeah, but not here.
It amazed me, that none I saw.
Well, I think, too, you're probably one of the only ones with a parking lot to accommodate
support it.
something like this, because none of the others would have, I think, anticipated this. Plus, a lot of them are in a plaza with other things.
Right.
So, but, I'm sorry.
You ever try to write notes during a football game? Here. Again, I think this is a way for the future. I think it's a benefit, and not only to senior citizens, as Mr. Delaney so noted, but to an awful lot of busy young families who, if they can call from their office desk and order their food and pick it up without going in the store for an hour, that saves them oceans of time. So I think it's a very good idea. I think it'll work well.
And one of the neat things is it kind of remembers what you do order. So if you're consistent weekly or whatever, you don't have to spend all that time each week doing the whole order. You can go through what you ordered last week and just kind of...
One thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, unfortunately, I was going to say, go to your app and you could look at it, but it's not active because the store doesn't have it yet. If you know a store that has it, you can go to that store and go onto their app.
Do you know if this store and other Walmarts are going to have delivery?
I have not heard of that yet, but I would have to, just thinking forward, that's probably,
I mean, Peapod, I think it's Stop and Shop, is doing that for...
yes, long time. Peapod,
But the other ones in other states that I saw all deliver.
right.
But that's just another issue. And it's amazing. I saw the packages coming in my daughter's house. And they are, environmental friendly. They keep the heat out, and this is in Florida. It was pretty amazing for me to see that. I guess there was some changes from notations by the building inspector relative to signs. Do you know that, Don?
The three from the building inspector were, the parking calculations weren't submitted,
Yeah.
which he spoke about, but were not included of how they're offsetting the
Right.
spaces. The second one was the comment about the trucks being parked overnight.
I'll
Been-
address that.
We were
yeah.
going to get to that, so.
Okay.
If it wasn't Mr. Ryder and Mr. Fowler, it was going to, when it got to me. And then the third one was the discussion about the seasonal mulch
Right.
and whatnot, which you addressed as well.
Yeah.
Those were those three.
Well, those three things are on my notes. I don't want to take all your thunder, Mr.
No, not mine. Other Mr. Johnson, but, if it got as far as the fifth guy, I was going to bring them up. It looked like we got through 2 out of the 3, so I figured we were left with 1 at worst.
Well, I'll get to it. The sign, I thought one of the signs, over the big sign was, we allow 60 square feet.
They have a special permit. You guys approved
Yeah,
the
we've
special
gone through,
permit.
this is
Okay,
this is
all
the
right.
one that we keep holding off on.
Okay, fine, then I'll
Yeah.
throw that away. The delivery, well, I'm going to let Mr. Johnson handle that. No, go ahead.
Mr. Ryder's turn now.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm going to leave that up to him, too. Thank you. The one question I had was the seasonal, because that does tend to get busy
Right.
in the springtime.
Right.
And obviously you addressed that. And I think really those paper parking spots, as you call, I think really that will only come during that season.
Right.
You know,
I agree.
Thanksgiving to New Year's potentially. And I think that could be potential employee parking, that alleviates those lost spots out front.
I mean, I've visited the store a few times over the last few months, and very rarely is the front parking field 3/4 full. So they do.
They're on Black Friday.
That I did not do. That I did not
It's a
do.
little,
Right.
But, you know,
But in general,
absolutely.
I think there's enough parking there.
And you addressed that you're not, the width of that sidewalk in the front where you have those plantings, it's going to be behind that.
Plantings remain.
Planting bed.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
All right. So, as we discussed, it depends. When it gets to me, I can either be the good guy or the bad guy. It all depends on what's been taken up by everybody else. But I do believe that this one with the trucks being parked in the parking spaces overnight, this is not a new comment.
No.
This has gone on for some time, and I feel like every time you guys come in and ask us to do something, we bring it up, and we're told that it's going to get taken care of, and then the next time you guys bring something in, we have to bring it up again. That gets irritating.
I just learned of this, so I'm not.
Which is what we get also. When this came in the last time about the pickup sign on the other end of the building, we'd already gone through it once saying, you can't do this at that end of the building, it won't work.
So I met with the store manager today, Ms. Waterhouse, and went through this whole issue with the parking of the trucks out front. Come to find out, there's a lot of complexities to it. It's not as simple as basically telling these guys to leave. They have basically asked them to leave numerous times. The tough part they have is they've got some signs in the parking lot that are roughly, 18 by 20, okay? They just ordered and just got in today new signs that are 2 foot by 3 foot tall, okay? That they are going to put on every light pole out there, okay? I was told that the tough part they have is the signs say that you'd be towed at your own expense. Well, when they call to have the trucks towed, the tow truck company will not come out unless they pay them $2,000 up front. And then they have to go after the truckers. It's not their trucks. It's off-road trucks that are coming there and staying there. What they did do also is they went to each of the trucking apps and made sure that they were removed as any type of overnight truck stop. She said they have had numerous conversations with the police department. My suggestion, because I knew this was going to come up and I did not think there was going to be a simple answer to this, was to suggest that I am more than willing to facilitate a meeting with somebody from the township and store management to see if there's a suggestion on how to handle this better. They are really trying to eliminate it. It's just they've had a difficult road, I should say. I was there this afternoon. There were 2 trucks, and then by the time I left, there was 3 trucks.
So, and again, because, I got to do this one, but the problem ends up being, though, that, I feel like, and I know it's not an easy situation, but at the same time, I feel like if at some point we don't put some sort of stick involved in this, there's really no reason for it to really be dealt with. And while I don't necessarily want to say that this is what we should do, an example of what I'm saying is if this cannot be reined in and taken care of, then it runs the risk of my suggesting that we put some sort of condition on the use of this service for you guys at the discretion of, if this isn't being taken care of, it could be suspended. And I don't want to be that draconian, but at the same time,
Right.
every time you guys come in with something, I think it's pre-printed on the sheet. And then he puts other comments around it, because
Okay.
that one comes up
Stands
each
out.
and every time. And, it makes us look bad if we keep giving you guys a chance to deal with it, and then it comes up every time.
I get it, and I knew this was coming up, and that's why I went there and met with the manager today to see what exactly they've been doing and how we can kind of take it a step further.
Has the store looked at a security guard? I mean, that's one way. Well,
But I think the problem is that even if you call them, you can call the police and have them come in and, I don't know, ticket them or whatever they do.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, if they're just gonna be willing to take the ticket and stay there anyways, you know what I mean? And if you can't get it towed out of there.
So another
Your alternative, I guess, is you tell those companies, if you don't stop, we stop using you.
It's not theirs. It's not their trucks.
Whoever you're getting things from is hiring them, correct?
No.
These are trucks that aren't delivering to you?
No.
I'm sorry, I
These
misunderstood.
are completely off-the-road truckers that are just stopping there. So another curious thing that I learned today was that, numerous times they've had the police come out, and if that trucker has maxed out his hours, they can't force him to leave because he can't drive on the open road.
He can't drive, but if they want the truck taken out of there, they can do that.
Right.
I misunderstood that, I thought we were discussing trucks that are connected to.
No. Because I asked that, and she said, no, we have no issue. We can
I don't-
control our own
Yeah,
trucks.
so I guess I'll tweak my comment then, in that there isn't anybody else in town that if somebody illegally parked in their parking lot, that we would get all over them.
Home Depot.
And do,
Market basket.
The same thing happened.
no, what I'm saying is that if it were their own trucks coming in and then staying, there's a lot more control.
Right.
That is what I'm saying, as opposed to somebody parking in there that has no connection to them. There's not a lot you can say to them. All right, well, let me move on for this for now, but this is something we're gonna have to find
Needs
an
to be
answer
addressed.
for,
Agreed.
whatever it is.
If I can say in the defense of Walmart, Walmart has been like motorhome friendly. They've always allowed people with motorhomes to come in and park on their lot. It's at night, and they're not parking up front, and they're way in the end of the lot, which is the beginning of our lot. But that's a common practice throughout the nation for Walmart. So I think that it's gone by. So because I'll go by Walmart and I'll look in and I'll see one or two, maybe three Walmart trucks parked there overnight. But what happens is other truckers note it and they go in there too. So, I don't know if we could tell Walmart they can't park their trucks there. It's their property.
Well, I think part of it was, I was thinking of some of the other folks we've had where we found out that they've been putting, tractor trailers or whatever on their property to use as storage against what they should be doing, and we've had those problems in the past, trying to,
Right.
shake those things loose. I don't know. Like I said, we'll have to come up with an answer for this. But I'm sorry, did you have something else, Mr. Fowler?
Yeah, the way I look at it, I think what they're getting, trying to get ahead of it with the signage. If you can put some teeth with the sign, then
Dogs?
it would make it work a little better.
One tow. I know it's an expensive venture, but you tow one truck.
Yep, they all know it.
They may
Send a
have to do a
message.
couple just to...
If they send a message,
Right.
I understand it's an expense, but
Right.
that usually will send a message to others. Listen, we were just towed out of there.
Right.
And then I know it's, you have to go after them, but you do have, there is, and at the tunnel there, that you could go after them for that fee.
All right, so for this, it's for the proposal itself, I have no issue with where we're moving it to on the building,
Okay.
because as we brought up in before, that left side is just, it just won't work.
Okay.
So moving it down near the lawn and garden, I think, is perfect, because as I think anyone here who's gone there knows, other than Christmas or early spring when people are using that gated area. That other side of the parking lot's fairly dead in terms of where everybody is. Most people are over to the left side, so I don't see it as being an issue shifting a little bit of the parking to open this up. My only thing on the new seasonal lawn and gardening section is, the only concern I have is that now it's a narrower space for what you're gonna put out there than that other more squared area. And it's also now being moved over to that slightly more highly trafficked area for the trucks when they do go around the back. So it's something I just wanna make sure that we're pointing out. It's, they're gonna have to make sure that they're keeping that in a safe area.
Correct. And I think keep access to it away from that side. Keep the access on the other side.
And, it may turn out that instead of having, 2 pallets of every kind out there, they may have to cut it down.
They're definitely going to have to limit their material that they put out there. Absolutely.
Obviously, I want to make sure that we make it clear in the permit too that, you have this area for this. No one is to pull up in front of the building for this.
Agreed.
I don't want the deliveries being done curbside, because that's what we've been trying to avoid with any of this.
The grocery deliveries?
Yes.
They will not. They
And that's what I
they
wanna
will
make sure
not
that
take
we're
it out to
putting
them.
in the permit, along with you saying that that's your policy.
And that's absolutely
I want
fine.
to make sure it's in the permit.
Yep.
And including the permit, also what you said earlier, that there was no retail goods component to this. This is strictly.
No general
grocery.
merchandise, strictly grocery.
And that's, because that was the other thing that was originally being asked on that left side, was that these would be product pickups
No.
and things like that, and that's just not going to work, I don't think.
So you can still order a TV online, but you have to go in and pick it up.
Correct. All right, so I have no issue with the signage down there. I mean, that'll make it pretty clear where everybody's going, even if they miss the canopy somehow. Plus, as I think Mr. Fattalia mentioned, you've got 4 spaces outside the canopy. If it turns out that
Right.
you guys are doing a booming pickup business, my guess would be that you'd ask for the next 2 spaces and then just not put another 6-space piece of canopy in.
We'd be back to see you for additional
But what I'm
spaces.
saying is,
It could be a
if you're doing
possibility.
6 pieces.
Yes.
It would basically be 2 more spaces and then put a new
Could be,
canopy on.
yes.
Which, again, in that area probably wouldn't be overly daunting. I think that's it from me. Mr. Fowler?
You mentioned the parking on the right-hand side in the rear of the building, additional parking.
Yes.
Do you know if that has lights, if there are lights out there?
The whole perimeter's lit with parking lot lights. So
Okay.
it is part of the original approval. There is,
Yeah, I was looking at the plan here, and
I don't think we depict where the existing site lighting is, but the whole site is lit.
Okay, good. Very good, thank you.
Welcome.
Do you know how many more employees you'll be hiring because of this?
I can't answer that. I know to start, they takes existing associates and train them first, and then I guess it's a progression with how quickly it picks up.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good, all right. So with that, I'll open it up to the public. If anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns on this?
Mark Kratman, 8 Sunset Road. I have no concerns with the project whatsoever, but I always bring it up when they come up and do something. There's a drainage swale on the side of the building over there, right when you come in.
Left-hand side.
This is the front of the building right
Yes.
here.
Yes.
So right over here,
Yep, right.
there's a drainage swale inside there,
Okay?
and that always gets covered with debris in the winter. And last time you guys came in, they went in and cleaned it all up, but it's since got bad again. It's wintertime, but what happens is somebody throws a carriage down there, something gets down there, and it's always a lot of litter and debris. So the beautification committee from the town tends to notice those things, and they bring it to my attention, and so there's been so many people out there.
I will note as part of the project that it be
Snow
clean.
on it right now and things like that, but if they can go out and clean up that area and keep
Sure.
it clean, that'd be great. It's right next to the hotel, so it's in between the hotel and the restaurant.
Okay.
Anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns? All right, with that, I'll bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board at this time?
Motion to close the hearing.
Motion made, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As to the permit as, modification of the site plan special permit,
Make a motion to approve the modification.
Okay. So we'll make a motion to approve the modification as submitted, including the comments
By the
made
board,
tonight
yep.
for the restrictions on noting it in the, no pickup in front at curbside, that it's limited, as they said, to the groceries, and no merchandise sales.
And the hours 8 to 8.
The hours of 8 to 8. Obviously, anything like that changes, you just have to come back.
Adding the additional spaces in the back there, right?
Right, and they'll line the spaces
we show
in the back
that.
to make the
Yep.
offset. Again, we'll make note that we've asked that the truck parking be addressed.
As well as any debris within,
And
on
the
the
soil
offsite.
melt.
I got that.
If there's anything we missed from the notes. All right, so we have a motion made, do I have a second? Second. Motion made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Any suggestions on who from the town I would set a meeting with for the trucks? Yourself, Anna?
Contact me and-
Okay.
Yeah, we'll set it up.
Moving on to agenda item E, 2131 Main Street, special permit, site plan
Thank you.
special permit, South
Thank you. Good
Village
luck.
Overlay District special permit, continued from 1/28/19. Yep,
Charge them.
thank you. All right, gentlemen, just state your names for the record, the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Andy Street. I'm with Civil Design Consultants.
I'm John Finaris, one of the partners in the project.
Good evening, Jim Wynn with Ron Mueller Associates.
Floor is yours, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. So we were here about a month ago at this point. This is a project located at 2131 Main Street. Just to kind of refresh the board's memory, tax map 96, lot 53, parcel's about 2.6 acres with a little over 300 feet of frontage along Main Street. The site's currently undeveloped. There's a degraded parking area towards the front of the parcel that's accessed by 2 curb cuts off of Main Street. The remainder of the site is largely disturbed, degraded, overgrown, with some more significant vegetation towards the rear along the property lines. From a zoning perspective, the front of the parcel, the majority of the parcel is commercially zoned with commercial zones on either side. And there's a small rectangle in the top that is in the R40 zone, and it has the condominiums in the back and the there's a multifamily district back there. The wetland system along the right-hand side of the parcel with buffer zones extending onto the property, and we'll be at the Conservation Commission presenting this same package to them on Wednesday, continuing that process as well. So the project that we have tonight, we've made some changes since the last meeting. What we're currently showing is 16 townhouse units spread out over 3 structures. Each unit has a footprint of 21 by 36 for about 750 square feet. There's also 2,000 square feet of commercial space towards the front along Main Street here. Parking for each unit will be tandem spaces stacked with 1 space inside each unit in a garage, and the second space behind it stacked in tandem. And there is a commercial parking area behind the commercial space here that supplies enough parking were this to be a retail facility. We chose retail. The tenant is unknown, but the retail is the more restrictive of the parking calculations, so that's how we've designed it too so far. There's also guest parking spaces. We have 5 parking spaces above Building 1 here, and then 5 additional spaces in that commercial parking type area that is located behind the commercial space. From a snow perspective, this area here is designated for snow storage, and new sidewalks proposed along Main Street with curbing and some additional sidewalks have been added to come up from Main Street to get onto the site and traverse the site with some handicap ramps and crosswalks there. In regards to the village residential design guidelines, I think we've made some strides and have put together a project that kind of hits on a lot of those components. We've consolidated the curb cuts. 2 of them exist today. We're dropping that down to 1. We're reusing vacant properties. This site has had a previous project that started construction. It was a retail restaurant facility that started and stopped, and now it's a degraded site with nothing on it. So we're reusing that for a use that fits in line with the sites around it. So it's complementary. We have a similar style development towards the rear with the condominiums, townhouse-style units, and then on either side, and across the street and in the area, we've got some commercial spaces of varying sizes. So it fits in with the neighborhood pretty well. The utilities will all be underground. We've screened the parking area. In your packets is a revised landscape plan prepared by Weinmeier J that shows screening along the parking areas around the buildings. The parking area is further screened by commercial building itself, so the development is well landscaped throughout. We've created some shared parking areas with the commercial parking space and the visitor parking for the townhouses in one space there, and provided sidewalks both along Main Street and in the site to access everything as safely as we can and with ADA compliance. From a transportation perspective, there's bike racks shown on site. There's also a bus stop, a couple bus stops up at Hill Street, which is, I don't know, a tenth of a mile away. So we've got a lot of ways to access this, a lot of ways to visit both tenants and commercial spaces and the tenants there. And then from a lighting perspective, we've shown some lights now. This will be dark sky friendly and pretty low impact to both the site. We don't want to disturb the residents here with aggressive lighting, but certainly some to enhance the site and some wayfinding and things like that. So really what we took away from the last meeting, I just kind of walked through the overall, but more specifically to this board's comments and some of the other feedback that we've gotten. I will say this package just went in recently, Thursday, Friday of last week, so we don't have comments back from TEC, town engineer, nor did we really expect them, but we have made some pretty significant changes to the layout, so we thought it was worth coming here to discuss with the board. So from a density perspective, that's kind of been a common discussion point, both when we hear conceptually at 22 units, 19 units was last time. We dropped that down for the first submission, and now we're down to 16. So we removed 2 from this building, 1 here, and then 1 from building 3 over there. So we are more or less in line. We're about 7 units per acre, which is more or less in line with the multifamily district guidelines, which isn't applicable here, but just as kind of a gauge from where we sit from a density perspective. From a layout perspective, we've flip-flopped the commercial building and the parking area there. That was a big concern kind of throughout of how that would look aesthetically and from a safety perspective. So now the commercial space is located along Main Street with all the parking to the rear of that. The proximity of Unit 1, which was previously kind of right below, closer to Main Street where that building is now, we've moved that building back. Well, we dropped 2 units, and that allowed us to move it back. So the access point to that unit is further back from Main Street, making it safer to both for the cars that would be there, but also people coming in and off of, in and out of Main Street as they try and get to the site. And because we switched the building and the commercial building in the parking lot, that access to the parking is also further from Main Street. So it's much safer all the way around to access any component of this development. Snow storage, there was some concern about access to there. We previously were showing access only through parking spaces. So what we've done, again, by dropping a unit from this building, we've got a dedicated area that will be striped no parking that will allow the snow removers to get access to that area without needing to worry about it being blocked by cars in theory, if people park where they should park. Guest parking has gone up by 5 spaces. The 5 you see here were on the previous submission, and we've added 5 more in here. There's only 10 necessary for the commercial space, and that's a 15-space lot there. So we've striped those as dedicated for the tenants' use of the townhomes. So that makes 10 total guest parking spaces for 16 units. Site lighting has been added. And then the other comment was about the Oak Street Way. Last time we submitted a preliminary, I guess, really in an email format from our attorney saying that that way has no significant rights in this property. We're still working with her to come up with a formal opinion, so that still is an outstanding item. We feel confident that it will be resolved, and that letter will certainly be submitted once we have it. So the only other thing I wanted to, I'm going to turn it over to Jim, talk a little about traffic as well, but I just wanted to talk briefly about the town's own town council wrote a response letter that was forwarded to us in regards to some of the issues, particularly from the building commissioner. I believe it's kind of been forwarded around, but he touched on the 3 items where the Oak Street Way, or 4 items where the Oak Street Way, the mixed-use development with the residential and commercial pieces being components of each other, the covered parking, and whether the board had the authority to waive Appendix C, which talks about parking requirements. So in regards to the mixed use, I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but the general intent was that the components are simply parts of the whole. There's no one piece, whether it's the commercial or residential, that needs to be dominant. They just both need to be present in order for it to be a mixed-use development. From a covered parking perspective, again, paraphrasing, there's nothing that does not allow covered parking spaces, in this case, garage spaces, so therefore, it is permitted. He did point out that, well, this is back to the mixed use, I'm sorry, but he did point out that the commercial building was previously attached to that building 3. And because it was attached, it should have been primarily retail or commercial on the bottom with units up above, which we did not have. We've resolved that issue anyway because we now have separated the commercial building from the residential building. And then regarding the ability to waive the parking table, that's clearly stated in the zoning as well, so that would be under the planning board's jurisdiction and authority to do so. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim, talk a little bit about traffic. I know there was a lot of discussion about that as well at the last meeting.
Great, thanks. So Rob Mueller Associates had prepared a traffic assessment. It was dated December 14th in 2018. At that time, it was still the 19 townhouses and the 2,000 square feet of retail. So we kept the traffic studies at 19, so the numbers we're presenting are conservative. So just keep that a note. It actually has dropped down a little bit since then. For trip generation, we use the industry standard of ITE trip generation manual. Based on those numbers I mentioned, the 19 previous units and the 2,000 square feet of commercial space, we have AM counts of 3 vehicles in, 9 vehicles out, and a PM count of 12 vehicles in and 9 vehicles out. And just to put that in, that's not assuming any pass-by traffic for the retail. If there's any traffic that's already in the street, it can pull off that. We didn't take any credit for shared trips if there's anyone that's going to use that commercial space within the residential houses. So we basically use the numbers as presented in ITE. Though it wasn't presented in the study, I just did want to kind of put in perspective and just a note of, as mentioned earlier by Andy, the previous you can kind of see that the site was already started as some paved areas. I just wanted to throw out some of the numbers of what that previous use would have generated if it was in fact built. So that was, it had a 2,900 square foot restaurant with drive-through window and had 6,000 square feet of retail space. So using the current ITE trip generation manual, that came out to be about, as I mentioned, it was 3 in, 9 out for what our current project is. That would generate about 60 cars in and 58 cars out during the AM peak. During the PM peak, as I mentioned earlier, we had 12 cars in, 9 cars out. That previous use would have had 60 cars in and 58 cars out. So just to kind of put a perspective of what the current proposal is to what was currently or previously being built on site. So with our generation numbers, we did 2 generation distribution models. One, we did a journey to work based on census data for people that reside in Tewksbury. So that's how we distributed the residential traffic. And then for the retail traffic, we used the existing traffic volumes out there to estimate where that traffic was going to go. So we did that. We have traffic counts that were done in March of 2018. So we have the traffic counts, our distribution, and our generation. We are able to distribute that traffic onto the roadways. And what that results in, and to put into perspective, when we distribute it north and south of the site, it comes to be about one additional car every 5 to 10 minutes that you would see on the street. So if you're looking north or south, you'd see one car every 5 to 10 minutes as part of this project. One of the big things that we want to do as part of the traffic assessment was obviously do a safety assessment of the driveway. So we did vehicle speed assessment along 38, and we found the average speed is actually slightly below the posted speed limit of 35, and we have a design speed which was just about at or slightly higher than that posted speed. So we used those numbers that we observed to do a sight distance analysis from the driveway. So basically people pulling out to their driveway to make sure they can see enough distance left or right so that they can pull out safely. There's two different criteria. There's one that's a minimum sight distance requirement, which is basically someone can pull out and safely stop. A car coming up can safely stop. And then there's the desirable, which is a car coming up and have plenty of maneuvering time to be able to react. And it's considered, it's beyond the minimum, it's a desired speed. So in this case, both north and south of the site, we meet both those requirements, not just the minimum, but also what's desirable for coming out of a driveway. We also looked at operations. So we had those existing counts, we put on what our site was going to generate, and for level of service, I don't think I need to go, I'm sure you heard many times levels of service A through F. So in the morning, the driveway operates at a level of service C. This is coming out of the driveway, and a level of service D during the PM. And then obviously on the main street on 38, there's very little traffic, so you wouldn't have impact on that. That's just coming out of the side driveway. This traffic study had been reviewed by TEC. I'm sure I think it was January that came out. Reviewing that letter, they agreed with all our assumptions, and from that we had no further responses that were required as part of that review.
So we're still working with town engineer, TEC, addressing those comments. I've made several changes to utilities and things like that, which I'm happy to get into. I think the focus, what we wanted to discuss with this board tonight was really in regard to some of the layout changes. We still have the Oak Street Way item hanging out there, so I don't think there's any expectation of finishing this up until that's resolved. But we did want to bring this, show you, we've tried to take some strides to address the concerns of this board and get some more feedback to keep the project moving forward. So thank you.
I'll just make two add points before I turn it over to the other members for their comments. One, in discussing the traffic, one of the things that did come up earlier on, because we're kind of going back to the original discussions, was about the entrance, which has now been addressed in terms of the concerns of having that unit out near the front and people coming in and basically being on top of that first unit as soon as you're coming in. So that was something that TC we did discuss waves back, and that's one of the reasons for that. And then the other one was on your rundown through the town council's comments. The one addition that I'll make in those was that the piece on the covered parking, there was one further comment listed in there about a suggestion that it might be wise for us to start including in the permit that second space, what amounts to a garage space, has to be kept in a condition in which you can park a car in there, and that it's not to be, it's not to become a storage area where if you open up the door, your car isn't coming in. So my guess is, and I'm not going to speak for everybody, but my guess is when the permit gets done, in the event it gets done, that's going to be a condition put in there, is that the tandem, the garage space is kept in a condition that, or the garage spaces be kept in a condition in which a vehicle can be parked in there. What you do beyond that, I don't think anyone's going to care, but it's not to prevent a car from parking in there.
Sure.
Sound about right to everybody?
I don't think there's any issues on this side of the table.
With that, I'll open it up to the board's comments. We'll start with Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really glad you considered a lot of my comments as well as my colleagues' comments regarding the commercial space and reducing some of the numbers there as far as the units. So I'm glad you went down to 16. It's a step in the right direction, I believe. A couple of questions I had were, did you get the fire department issues resolved with them as far as turning radiuses and all that stuff? Was that issues outstanding with them?
So we haven't received a formal letter from the fire department other than the IDR letter, which was more, provided the typical comments about what was required. So we provided a turning template. I have not seen anything since then.
Okay.
So we'll continue working with them just as with the other departments.
So we'll be having some renderings pretty soon, I guess, as far as design and all that stuff, right?
Correct, yes, with the next submission.
So now, did I hear also they're going to be condominiums, not rentals? Is that correct?
That is
Homeownership,
correct,
yeah.
yeah.
Owner occupant.
Okay. And I was reading actually as well that there's reduced to 2 units of affordable housing now?
Correct, yeah, there's 16 total units. When you do the 15%, that drops the number from 3 to 2, correct.
Okay. Not a good sign, I guess. I'd rather have 3 than 2 myself, but with that, I guess I'll wait until I hear some more, see some more renderings and designs and so forth, but I'm glad you listened to some of our comments, so thank you.
Thank you.
Delaney? Thank you. You made eye contact again, so I got to go with that.
The only question I guess I can have, because a lot of the questions that I had from before are answered, with the visitor parking, there's only one handicap parking space that I see in the whole complex. Does that mean that no visitor, if a visitor is handicapped, he can't come or can't park there? Or, I don't know. I just have a thing about the handicap parking spaces.
Sure.
Okay, I think that, because the parking spaces are wider, I mean, if a person has to go all the way, that's handicapped, has to go all the way, walk all the way from the front all the way to the back, that's kind of tough.
Sure.
And that's in the way I'm thinking at this point. We had talked about it. I see the one handicap spot by the retail store, but at least one in the visitor.
Yep.
If it's possible to make that space. I know that parking space has to be wider.
Right.
I don't know what your limits are. Other than that, you've made most of the changes that we've asked for.
We can certainly add that. Yeah.
I am also pretty good with what we're doing here. I still have a hard time, that hill, I've been coming up and down that hill out front by Mavericks down, or Hefner's down. That I tried it the other day at 4:30 to make a left-hand turn, coming down the hill to make a left-hand turn. And it's not as easy as maybe the traffic study suggests. But if the traffic study is correct, or whatever my other board members feel, I guess I'll have to be okay with it.
Well, I think to the point of the traffic study is not to say that there aren't there's a lot of traffic on Main Street. It's that this project will minimally impact that, certainly compared to the previous example. That's the intent of what we're trying to get across.
All set, sir.
Just before I move on, just because Mr. Delaney brought it up, I mean, again, in the residential portion, obviously, the handicap space, unlike the commercial, isn't a requirement, but I do get Mr. Delaney's point on the distance. That is a long way. If you end up doing one, I suspect that the place to put it's going to be right near the latticed section you have with the snow storage.
Correct.
You know what I mean? That
Yep.
just seems to make the most sense in terms of fitting it in.
Yep.
So if that's what ends up happening, I don't know the rest of the board members' feelings, but in the event that you do one, I think that makes the most sense. I think it's going to fit the best, but you could pull it off because you have that section there to incorporate into that. Does that, Mr. Delaney, that makes sense to you?
Does.
All right, very
Yeah,
good.
we will do that. Yeah.
Mr. Ratto.
Thank you. I like that I will echo Mr. Fratalia, I like the fact that you reduced the number of units. One concern that I've had many residents contact me on, I went out to the site, with you moving that commercial building to the front, what's the distance from edge of sidewalk to face of sidewalk? Edge of sidewalk that abuts the property to edge of sidewalk on the road. Do you know that distance there?
Sorry, say it one more time. Edge of sidewalk.
Edge of sidewalk in front of your commercial property.
Okay.
And to the face of the granite curb on 38. Do you know what you have for a distance there?
So it is a
Roughly 20 feet? I mean, I don't know.
20-foot setback, yes, roughly 20, probably closer to 25.
Now, you mean without impacting the property, I mean, it's really, you have more plantings there. Have you looked into a decel lane on that right-hand side, pulling 2 to 3 cars in? And that would mitigate any additional traffic turning onto the parcel? It will help impact any traffic one direction. Obviously, we can't do anything taking a left into the parcel, but I think, you know, the distance, if you come after the guardrail at the hydrant and you come in with a 2 to potentially 3 car decel lane there and still give yourself, roughly if you went with a 12-foot lane, decel lane, that gives you 6 feet and still a row of planting, low planting before you get to the sidewalk, which abuts the face of the commercial property. And I think that doesn't detract from the building itself, but what that does is going to mitigate some traffic entering that property. And I think it may be a selling point when you're looking at a commercial property for renting. It's going to be allow access into that parcel easier, and it's going to help on your sight line. I understand the sight lines are based on the 30 mile an hour, but it's much less than that because you say it's reduced speed. That's because of the traffic on 38. If you go there 10 o'clock at night, it's higher than 30 miles an hour. So I think that's going to give you, 33 feet and an 11-foot length car. That's going to give you an additional sight line looking down.
So we obviously don't propose it here, and I'm going to let Jim talk a little bit more about it too, but, you know, we certainly have to go to the state with this. I mean, we need a highway access permit, and if that's a concern of theirs, would certainly something we'll work to address. And do you want to add to that, Jim?
So I mean, I can just give you the perspective of the numbers that we have for those right turn and in. So we have in the morning, again, this is the 19, so I mean, I don't know if it's going to be, they're pretty low to begin with. So it's 2 in the morning that's going to turn in, and we have 5 in the afternoon that will turn in. So maybe, I don't know if it's 4. But it's very, very low volume.
That's a residential portion that you, but.
So that's a total, so that'd be total.
Well, you're still unsure of the proposed commercial component, so we don't know what that commercial component can be, but that will mitigate any traffic from the commercial. I think those numbers are more realistic from a residential standpoint, but from, adding that additional commercial into that, I think those numbers, I understand they're a guideline, and, but I still think those numbers are going to be much higher entering that parcel. And if you can look at any of those businesses or developments along 38, a right turn in, they are higher than that standard number that's in the manual. So I think taking realistic counts are going to help.
Yeah, I mean, so we did use shopping center rates. So, it's a small space. These numbers it depends what goes in exactly, but for any typical retail that would probably go in there, these numbers would probably be right about on. And as mentioned, as Angie had mentioned, that, this is Mass Highway, so, the project, the numbers will all go review in front of them. One of the things too is, when you start chopping up the roadway as well for a very low intense type use, they may not want that anyway, so.
I'm sure that Mass DOT would be acceptable to a decel lane there. I don't think they would be opposed to a decel lane. I think anything you can mitigate traffic on 38 between Shawshene Street and the Wilmington line, or from anywhere from Walmart to the Wilmington line, anything we can do to mitigate traffic or the potential slowdown of traffic, I think Mass DOT would be acceptable too. I think exploring that option would be, I think from a commercial standpoint, that would be a intriguing feature for a future commercial business in there. But other than that, I like the factory reduction on the density. You handle the snow storage, but I will also echo Mr. Delaney's handicap parking. I think having a handicap parking spot in the overflow parking, as you will, would be helpful.
All right, Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank you for listening to us the last meeting. I know you made some modifications on this that reduce your density of the residential ones. I'm sure you didn't like that, but it also made it safer because now you can move the residences back, especially the one on the left, so you would not put someone in peril with someone coming in. Separating the, not to be redundant and add on this, but the biggest thing that I saw was when we said, supposed to have the parking in the back of the commercial. I'm sure you found that out, and that's why you've done this, and it all, that separates the residential from the commercial, and as it should be. Other than that, the handicap was taken care of, and again, I want to thank you for listening to us and making the changes. Right now, we're on the road to go.
Thank you.
All right. So, again, I guess I'll echo it only because, you know, it's not always a simple process for us. You know, you started off at 22, you get down to 16. That's not insignificant to have a 6-unit drop, you know, based on the comments we've given. So, you know, I'll say the same thing, which is appreciative of, you know, not making this a knockdown drag out over what we've been trying to explain is that, you know, what was presented originally wasn't going to work. So that's good. You know, obviously, you know, you've submitted some new stuff, so we have departments that we need to hear back from. So that's, you know, obviously, you know, we're not done tonight. So we'll wait on those comments to come back. I don't have any additional questions at this point. Most have been covered for those.
You brought up the town council's replies, and I thank you for that. I think he was asking for information.
Yeah, that was my next one, which was the one that's outstanding is, obviously, the town council has asked for, you know, an official, you know, attorney's opinion so that he can review what's submitted, then render a decision for us to use. So any, you know, all the work you're doing and, you know, whatnot, you know, we can only get to a certain point, though, until that's resolved. So one way or the other, that information is going to have to get in. You know, the town council is going to have to review it. So obviously, it's in your best interest to get that in sooner because obviously town council is going to need time. So while everything else is going on, you're going to want to get that in because, you know, you don't want it to be the last thing holding everything up. Right. But I you know, I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but obviously, you know, even if we were to approve something, it's going to be held up and conditional on getting a final answer on that anyways. So it doesn't really do you any good. I mean, it's going to be a piece of paper at that point. So it's something that's going to have to get, you know, resolved. And, you know, obviously town council's, you know, made the comment, you know, he's not going to do it without getting the opinion in first. So obviously that's got to get in. Right. So
we expect that, at least the letter from our Attorney Moore, as soon as tomorrow even. Okay. So, and then it'll be submitted as soon as we have it.
All right, good enough. All right, with that, I will open it up to the public for any questions, comments, or concerns. Anyone? Come on up.
Mark Kratman, 8 Sunset Road. I love the fact that they reduced the number from 19 to 16. I think that's a big help. I think there was way too many units going in there. Still not great with it. 16, but they made progress. I'm happy that they did that. The sidewalk that they're putting out there, is it granite curbing, cement sidewalks? What is the proposed going in there?
It's granite curbing.
Okay. And I like the idea of the decel lane going inside there. I think that's a great idea. There's a decel lane that Mass DOT issued right down the street. It's right in front of Gold's Gym. They put a little decel lane in there, allow the traffic to keep flowing, especially when we get those traffic points where it jams in. You can move right into the place and slide right in, and it doesn't slow down the traffic. So you got a little small decel lane to go in. So they have issued one in the past. And I think the last thing we want in this town is another empty commercial building in front of this place. So the fact that I understand the traffic counts, things like that, but when people aren't going to go into a place if you can't get into it, plain and simple. We've got a couple of them that are already on 38. They built mixed use, we built residential developments, they're right down the street, and they haven't been filled in a year. So the fact that you can't get in and out of some of these places is a detriment to people going on. So the more work that you make it easier for the traffic to continue to flow, any improvements that you can make will make somebody look at that parcel to actually go in there as a renter to rent that facility. But if you don't make it easy for you to get in, to make it for a commercial building, if you can't get cars in and out, nobody's going to go in. If they can't get out of there after they buy whatever they want and they're going to wait 15 minutes to cut across the road because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and everybody knows what it's like there. So any mitigations, the decel lane I think would work fine. I think that would help, at least on one side. And then when we're coming up, the sidewalk's going to go down to the end and it's going to come right up against the guardrail there. So it's going to be, I know we've been trying to put sidewalks up and down 38. There's nothing there now. So that's a big improvement, even though it's just in front of their parcel. Little by little, we're pecking away, getting them in there. So we hope they take those considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board at this time?
Motion to continue.
All right, we have a motion to continue on the next agenda. So I have a motion to continue this to 7:15 on February 25th. Do I have a second?
Second.
One question, will that give you enough time to explore? So I'm just asking.
I'd rather give them the time and the date, and then if you guys aren't going to be ready, you can obviously submit for a continuance. But in case you are ready, I'd hate to push you a whole nother into March.
Right.
If you've got something to say, feel free to come in. If you don't, you can always request that we just continue it. Just try to give us as much heads up as you can so we know what's going to happen.
I would think at
7:15.
a minimum, we'll have feedback from town engineer and things like that, so, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, it is 3 weeks too.
Yeah, it's
Next meeting.
3 weeks.
Right. So, all right, so we've got a motion to continue to 7:15 on the 25th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item F, which is 138 Astle Street, open space, residential design, special permit, definitive subdivision, continued from 128.
Yeah. Jim, how you doing? Okay.
All right, you state your names for the record, the floor will be yours.
Yep. Jim Hanley, Civil Design Consultants.
Christian Murray, 138 Astle Street.
Okay. We're here last month. At that time, we had received a review letter by DPW. We talked at a high level about some of the waivers that DPW was not in favor of supporting. So we went back, we made some modifications to the plans. We provided some additional support on these waivers. And I guess today what I'd like to do is kind of walk through where we've been with you guys, the revisions that we've made, the OSRD considerations, because this is an OSRD subdivision. So there's some flexibility in the layout of the development itself that I think impacts this a little bit. And then kind of just walk through the additional waiver information that I supported, provided at the last submission. So, October 13th, we sat down with Planning, Conservation, and DPW, had a general conversation. We've been in here since August, give or take, with that plan that's on the bottom, had 6 lots, 550-plus feet of roadway. We got strong feedback from the board. We came back, we modified this thing to keep the existing house and provide 3 lots out back. Met with you before, right after we met with, in a meeting with the town, just to kind of give you kind of a general sense and an overview on this thing. After that, we spent a couple of weeks revising our design to try to move this specific project and this specific roadway forward. We got an IDR memo number 2 on the 4th of January. We came back to you guys, had that conversation. On the 15th, we submitted our revision, I think it's our revision number 2, which basically addresses the IDR comments. Got comments, I think, Thursday or Friday of last week, and we're here in front of you tonight. So what do we do to try to address the opinion of the DPW specific to the waiver request that we've provided? So the first thing we did is, if you look at sheet C4, that's our roadway centerline profile and roadway alignment. You'll see that we increased the width of the throat of the roadway where it meets Astle Street from 20 feet to 24 feet. So 24 feet is what is required by the subdivision regulations, and this provides some additional area for maneuverability. As we move up the roadway, about 80 feet up the roadway from Astle Street, we are back down to the 20 feet. That's something that we've done in the past, so we tried to increase that throat width just to provide some additional maneuverability in there. We've also increased the radius of the edge of pavement from our proposed private roadway to Astle Street from 25 feet and 20 feet to 35 feet and 25 feet. So you'll see that where we tie in here, these flares have actually been increased. They're actually a little bit greater. The 35-foot one is greater than what the subdivision regulations call for. Again, that's just to give a little bit more maneuverability as we enter or exit onto Astle Street. We've also provided some signage, 15-mile-per-hour posted signage on here, so that the drivers are aware. It's a private roadway servicing 3 house lots once we get about 80 feet back. Just want to make people aware. We also took quite a bit of pain here to scale back the existing grade and the existing slope to the west of the access drive. And that's to improve our sight distances as the car sits in the sits at the intersection waiting to take the turn left or right. I just want to provide you with these. These are some pictures looking in either direction from the existing driveway. So the existing driveway is only about 14 feet wide, plus or minus. Obviously, this is going to be 24 feet wide, so a little bit further down the hill. You can see that first top page there, don't have good sight distance. So part of our plan here is to improve that. We have one existing driveway with not very good sight distance. So we're going to provide a proposed private roadway servicing 3 more house lots and improve the situation that's already out there. On the second page, you can see looking up, this would be to the east. Sight distances really aren't too much of an issue. There is the remnants of a stone wall that you can see on the far right-hand side, up about 1/3 off the bottom of the page. That's in the right-of-way. It's really just, it's not a stacked stone wall. It's really a kind of a remnant of an older stone wall. We have to make some adjustments there to achieve the sight distances that we need to, but at the end of the day, we're going to have better sight distances than what's out there today. So again, this is an OSRD. I don't want to lose sight of that. We got a subdivision, definitive subdivision, as well as an OSRD special permit. The OSRD, really their regulation, flexibility is integral to the OSRD special permit. So in the purpose of intent, what they want to do and what they specify is to allow for greater flexibility and creativity in the design of residential subdivisions and developments. Then it continues to encourage a more creative and thoughtful approach to land development, minimize disturbance, loss of undeveloped open spaces, utilize and incorporate existing topography and natural features. In order to do this, we have to ask for relief from some of the subdivision regulations. To promote efficiency and economy of streets and utility layouts, that's F. To encourage development in harmony with the natural area and promote alternative construction methods. So that, again, I think it says right in here that we're open to some flexibility here. Even in the design process, step 3, align the streets. This zoning bylaw goes so far as to say, let's find the best house locations on a site and get a roadway to support those locations. Align streets and driveways in order to access the house sites, and then it goes into common driveways. Again, 7546, this is where it kind of goes into what you would make the decision on. OSRD has less detrimental impact on the tract than a conventional development. And one of the considerations is whether the OSRD achieves greater flexibility and creativity in the design of the residential development than in a conventional subdivision. So I put together a letter, I think it was fairly thorough, and I looked specifically, and I kind of broke this out as a second letter that I wanted to provide additional support for the waivers that we're requesting. I wanted to itemize all this stuff, provide some context, and then also talk about what the AASHTO regulations, which your subdivision regulations are based on, in the context that they have. So we went back and we looked at a handful of developments that we've done in the past. That's my first relevant example here, where we requested, DPW has supported, and the board has approved waivers, the exact same waivers. And I absolutely understand that every project is different, and all these waivers have to be considered on their own merits, on their own lots, but I think it's important to just kind of put out there that, hey, we're not looking for something that we haven't looked for in the past that we've been able to achieve. So I provided a couple of examples with that. As far as the subdivision control regulations, your subdivision design standards, this is my second piece here, are based on the AASHTO design standards. When you look at the AASHTO design standards, they specifically address situations where either each of the requirements, design requirements, can't be met or haven't been met. And they talk about the flexibility that's involved in that. So is specifically the AASHTO guideline, it's not intended to be a detailed design manual. It could supersede the need for the application of sound principles by the knowledgeable design professional. Sufficient flexibility is permitted to encourage independent design tailored to particular situations. That's a quote right out of AASHTO. So I think that the policy recognizes that in certain situations, a balanced approach employing the designer's judgment in the guidelines will allow for an acceptable independent solution. So I think it's important to appreciate that the rules that your subdivision design standards are based on, those rules say there is flexibility here, and they give an allowance for that flexibility. And then it further states that one of the items that we really want to look at here is the actual capacity or the volume of the roadway. We have 4 single-family residential lots. So AASHTO says when you get to a road that has a volume of 400 vehicles per day or less, that another regulation may be more appropriate in those standards, because the roadway has such minor volume that to hold the design to the AASHTO design standards may not be appropriate. So they cut off the number at 400 vehicle trips per day. We have 4 single families, that's closer to 40. So we're about 1/10 of what AASHTO considers very low volume roadways. So in this AASHTO guideline for geometric design standards, this is the third, I guess, example in my letter. The guidance supplied by this text addresses the unique needs of such very low volume roads and the geometric design to meet these needs. These guidelines address issues for which appropriate geometric design guidance for very low volume roadways differ from the policies normally applied for higher volume roadways. these guidelines may be used in lieu of the guidance in the typical AASHTO standard. To kind of put my arms around this whole thing, we've made these revisions by increasing the width of the throat. We've increased the radius at the intersection. We've tried to make as much room as we can. This is an OSRD, not a conventional subdivision. Flexibility is kind of inherent in what we're trying to do. We showed you some similar projects that greater relief was allowed. We've also kind of looked at AASHTO and what they direct us to do. Last couple things, private roadway, not a public roadway. The homeowners association will be responsible for all maintenance activities. We're essentially adding 3 additional lots to an existing driveway and improving that driveway. Right now, there's a driveway out there for 1 lot that's about 14 feet wide that does not have good sight lines. We have extremely low volume, about 1/10 of what the AASHTO considers very low volume. We have 367-foot long roadway with a maximum grade of 6%. So we really tried to listen to everybody, tried to come up with the best balanced approach that we can. Got the DPW letter, I think it was Thursday or Friday. There was a half a dozen comments. This is, from my perspective, the most significant one that I kind of wanted to come to you guys tonight and have the conversation about, where you guys stand with the changes that we made and the additional information that we provided.
All right, start Mr. Ryder.
Thank you. I spoke with Mr. Hardman today in regards to this. I think the stone wall to the east, it's tough. On the plans, it depicts that it is out to the edge of the roadway. Actually, out on the site, it is somewhat falling apart. And I think, if necessary, that stone wall could be removed. That last 3 or 4 stones could be removed, and that would give you the sight line there. I did speak with him. His concern on the west side, as you read in his number 5, he was basing it, you used the 4-foot height, and the AASHTO manual.
Yeah, we'll clear that up. Yes.
So,
yep.
I think if you can address that from the 3.5 feet above ground, I think you can get that, and you can probably gain that by the slope. You may have to tailor the slope as you already have on the left-hand side, turning out of the, looking down Assel Street.
Yep.
I think you can gain that sight distance there.
Yes.
And then one of the other concerns I have is, as he noted on here, is the water line.
Yeah.
You will not pass a pressure test. That will fail. You can.
Because of the condition that existing line is in?
Yes. At you will have a high point there. If you look on the C4, you'll see that you have a high point there, and that will not pass that won't pass a pressure test. So I think you're going to have to adjust that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd never.
That's it. And that's just, I think these were done based upon some test pits. So did you hit refusal at that point?
No, so we haven't, no.
Okay, so at Station 1, roughly 125, between 125 and 150. And that was the question I had. Did you hit refusal on a test pit there? So I think if you can take that high point out of the water line, you'll handle any issue with that. Because you're going to get an air pocket, and ultimately it will either end up back in the system, and you won't pass a pressure test. So.
Okay. Yeah, well, I hadn't seen that comment come back at us, so I haven't had a chance to talk to Kevin yet.
I noticed it, and then I read it on his report, so we discussed that. But I think, other than that, you've addressed everything that we've brought to you numerous times. I think also, too, with your neighbor to the west, as I requested, if we can look at when you're out on the site doing final grading, if you can keep somewhat of a swale to head towards that lower portion.
Right.
And that's obviously, you won't know that until you're doing your final grading. And I think you can be done that within the top 3 or 4 inches of, prior to seeding.
Okay.
And you can get that to mitigate any flow that's going to go near the residence property.
Okay.
Other than that, I think if you can address those, it's a good.
Mr. Fowler?
Believe it or not, sure you're not, I'm all set at this time.
All right, very good. Mr. Delaney?
I'm all set at this time.
Mr. Fratelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. Did we resolve the fire department request regarding the hydrants?
Regarding the hydrant, so I've kind of gone back and forth with the lieutenant, I don't have anything in writing yet. We've gone back and forth. He had a question relative to the turning radiuses. We modified that plan. I sent that back to him last week, and I just haven't been able to close the loop.
Wasn't there a question of the distances between the house and the hydrant or something, right?
What happens is it has to do with fire flow that we'd achieve at that hydrant, which I don't know yet. So if I had to extend the line out, then that's what we do.
Sure. And I reviewed the issue of the geometry of the road and so forth, and given it's a low-volume roadway, I mean, I have no problem accepting your explanation, and the problem, no problem with the theory of the road. I think it's a 3-lot subdivision. I think we'd be willing to bend the rules a little bit like they ask, and that, just to get it resolved for you.
Great.
But I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. So I'll note the same thing. I started with Mr. Ryder because that's kind of how we left it last time, was that, these are things we've typically done, but we wanted to get a feel for how important some of the comments Mr. Hardeman made were, were they just comments highlighting, what the rules were, or were there specific reasons why he was noting those and saying, don't grant the waivers, or I don't recommend granting the waivers. And I'm glad that in the interim, those can be addressed so that, I mean, as you see in one of the letters, basically 4 out of the 5 that were listed there were already saying, don't have an issue. It was just the one at the top, just needed a little more tweak. So that's, I'm glad that we were able to take care of that, rather than it looking like us just saying, well, we'll do what we want to do. Thanks for the comments. I thought it was important to at least get a feel for that, so that's good. I noticed, and this is a Mr. Fowler thing, and he didn't comment on it, but I figured I'd throw it out there. I noticed the bus stop piece added to the front, which, thank you very much, because I think that, as Mr. Fowler pointed out, those are very useful to these kind of things when, you may have the kids hanging out, needing, a place to be safely able to stand and wait for the bus, at the end of these driveways / streets. So thank you for that. I mean, otherwise, obviously, there's a few things outstanding, just waiting for comment back on, but other than that, I'm okay. So with that, I will open it up to the public for any questions, comments, or concerns.
Yeah, my name is Kyle Moore, 121 Sesame Street. I went to the Conservation Commission meeting, and I was in question about the 4-foot chain link fence around the retention pond because of the situation that exists there. And they said, you have to go back to the planning board. That comes under their authority. So I'm requesting that that be done because of the situation that exists. If we have to have the pond there and the water there, at least put the fence around the pond to keep the situation under control. That, that's all I need to really say. I'd like to get your opinion. I mean, are you okay to put a 4-foot chain link fence around the retention pond? That's all I'm asking for. And you know why. Or if you don't know why, we'll have to explain it to you.
I think it's reasonable. It's something maybe I'd like to discuss with my client. We're coming back, looks like anyhow, so we'll, yes, no, I hear you. Right, I understand.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think, I guess I would ask, it raises a good question. It's just, what do we anticipate how much water will be in the pond? And I think you can do that based upon the calculations.
Yeah.
Figure that calculation out, what we'll have for standing water, in how long, and obviously you can base that on the average rainflow.
He's reduced the amount of water that's going to go into the pond by putting those little rain leaders in. He's trying to do the best he can.
Absolutely.
I agree with him.
Sir, I don't mind you continuing to comment, but we can't pick it up if you're not near the mic, so they won't get it on the thing. So if you want to add a little bit, that's fine, but I just got to bring you back up there to do it, that's all. I just don't want to lose it because people at home can't hear it, and then when we do the minutes, we don't know what we're saying.
You know, the whole situation is not a win-win. I can't get rid of the retention pond, but he's worked with me. He's putting in dry wells, and I would hope that the lots would be graded to the dry wells, and they're big enough to take the water. The only other concern was the house next to me and the 4-foot chain link fence around the pond. And those are all reasonable requests. And
we'll look at that for the next
those
meeting.
dry wells are going to help him with his calculation for the pond. I know that. So,
All right, so we'll come back with, comment on that for the next one? Sure.
Yep.
One way or the other, and then we can discuss it at that time. All right. Anyone else with any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I'm Karen Rogers. I live at 158 Astor Street. In the past, I have mentioned my house being at the bottom of a hill, 138's above. Did you change the grade of the driveway? You didn't make any changes on the driveway, right?
On the driveway, I didn't, but it is lower than it is currently out there now, right? So we talked to Conservation, how that roadway is going to collect water off of the area
Coming
to
down.
the east of it, where the existing house is.
And I still have a concern with how the driveway is going to be coming down a hill right toward my property. And I've been concerned about probably some type of a guardrail or a fence to protect my property. And also, I had asked about the maintenance of that driveway, and you had mentioned that would be the new property owners. And the plowing of snow, how coming down the hill, all that snow would be pushed down toward my property. So if there was some type of a fence or some type of a protection here to help protect my property.
Yeah, so I think just to kind of go back to the original discussion we had when we brought the concept in, the idea of the, sorry. So the idea here was basically to set the elevation of the roadway at this location here a little bit lower than the existing grade, so that we have a little bit of a pitch onto the roadway. It's very flat right there. And we have about a 10 or a 15 foot.
It's not that
In which direction?
right here.
Right,
That's a hill.
right,
You're going to go down the hill, it's going to go across the hill
right,
with a
but,
slant.
right, so right now, it collects in this roadway.
Right.
Right, and then it's gonna come to our catch basin that's down here.
Are you?
And then go out. So what we tried to do is, you can see there's no grading here, there's none of these grading lines, and that's because we're tying in at the existing slope elevation that's right there. So we're not gonna have an opportunity to push anything off, because these existing trees within 10 feet plus or minus of the property line are gonna stay there. So that's gonna be kind of its own natural,
Those big trees.
yeah, gonna be its own natural kind of barrier.
I did have a question. This is also, right behind my house, there's another hill. It's like I'm at the bottom, like a bowl shape.
Yeah.
And when I look out, the hill goes up again, right in back of my house. And I was wondering about, is that going to be all graded down? Are you grading that all down to make that road, your driveway?
You said, I'm not.
Yeah, it's this area right here. You're going to have to grade that down, right?
Really, the line is like 15 feet off your your property line, the property line we share.
Yeah.
The elevation wise, that's not gonna change. So we're not up high and gonna throw everything down on top of you. We're kind of keeping it right where it is there now.
All right, well, I do still have that concern of the flow of the water coming down my hill. We've been pumping, sub pumping's been going constantly this past fall and winter. I've never seen so much water as we have right now. And right now, the whole swampy area here is water. Quite a bit of water that hasn't been able to drain away. That's always been my concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to address you. In your profile is roughly 2% towards the existing home. The roadway, you're going to pull it 2% away from the property, coming down.
Plus or minus, yeah. The
2%.
shoulder?
Yes.
Yes, right.
Okay, so 2%, and you're going to pull that into, so realistically, you may see less water coming off that hill because he's going to retain it now on the roadway. He's got curbing on both sides, and he's going to take that to the basins, and then he's going to try and mitigate at the bottom of the toe of that hill along that edge of the road. So you may potentially see less water coming off of that hill. Now it's captured on the roadway.
And again, just general information. When the projects come in, they have to present to the town the calculations to show at a bare minimum that they can't increase any problem that exists. I mean, what happens in the real world of how things work. But in terms of, we don't get to the point where we can approve these projects until, the town departments have been satisfied that they've at least been submitted the numbers to show that they're not going to increase a problem that exists. So, as Mr. Ryder pointed out, you may find that as a result of their work, it may improve, but at a bare minimum, they can't do more harm. So just keep that in mind. Some of what goes on outside of this room, the information gets here, but you don't really hear it in the room. So I just want to make sure I mention that. All right. Anyone else with any other questions, comments, or concerns on this? All right, hearing none at this time, I'll bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
We continue, okay, make a motion, continue until we next.
Okay, so we'll continue this to the February 25th meeting at 7:20. The motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. I would expect at that point, we should be pretty much T's crossed, I's dotted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, good deal.
Thanks.
Very good, thank you. All right. Brings us to, let's just get through. Any old business for anyone? No old business? All right. Any new business anyone needs to discuss? Seeing none, I'm just going to run through these. Then we have correspondence, which everyone has in their packet. Is there anyone you want to highlight?
Nope, nothing to add from my memo.
So does anybody have any questions on any of those comments? Yes. Okay, Mr. Fowler?
Chairman, I want to thank... Hi.
And we're back.
Okay.
I want to thank Mrs. McGinty for the following through, as she has done in the previous meetings, of updating us to where we are on a lot of the subject matters. It makes it a lot easier for us. Doesn't stop us from making a decision, but it's really helpful, extremely helpful. It's a breath of fresh air.
I will echo that. It just, we read all these notes down sometimes on our paperwork, and then that paperwork goes missing, and we start all over again the next time we come in. It's nice to have these as a kind of a running gauge on where we stand, especially when we want to yell at people and send letters out.
I was actually hoping that we had a small window of weather that I was hoping they were going to get the sidewalks poured on Woburn Street. They're all framed and prepped. I was hoping that they were wise enough to take advantage of these either 3 or 4 days that we're going to have, but it's going to push out, with the weather coming in at the end of the week, so.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, my only comment was, I mean, we got the photos in here, obviously, for the, for Circle, and they did what we asked them to do. I really hope that this gets done as soon as possible, because it will deter from what it otherwise looks like a really nice project in sight. It's necessary, I understand that, but the sooner we can get rid of the Jersey barriers and open that lane up.
I think it's done, Steve.
The pole is moved.
I think it's done.
Pole, yeah.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yes, I went by,
What's going on with this?
yeah, pole's moved. This had happened, I think.
Oh, all right,
last-
even better, because that's
end
what
of
I was
last
hoping.
week, so.
Oh, fantastic.
So the open house is coming up, open house?
February 13th.
13th.
That's what happens, I go back way to get here, I don't even buy them, so.
Before Valentine's Day.
That's right, the 38. All right, but that's great, because I mean, I was happy that they did what we needed, and it was going to be safe, but obviously, it's going to look a lot better, it can work the way it's supposed to work, so that's good.
Mr. Chairman, one other concern I had was, and I meant to call Anna today about it, if we had any outstanding issues with the breakaway center on Carter Street. I know they were written up in the paper regarding the Board of Health and so forth.
I comment on this before you jump in, only because you wouldn't have known some of these things. We've had some ongoing things. I hate to pile on, because they obviously have quite a bit of things to handle for the Board of Health right now. But they do have a habit of forgetting the things we ask them to do or not do. Like I said, Mr. Vitale is probably alluding to some of those, not the least of which is those insane cement things they stick out in the middle of the parking lot. I still don't understand what they're doing with those. They took them out again, and then people park there. I don't understand why we can't just let them line it to begin with. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's so, have you seen the
I'm sorry,
site?
can you clarify which address you're
We're talking about the
speaking of?
Oh, I'm sorry, the hockey rink on Carter Street.
No, I haven't
Okay.
seen that.
So one of the, there's a few things that we've had with them over time, but one of the things that seems to still go on and on is a parking lot issue. There's a section of the parking lot that we originally wanted as a bus turning around, but it's, if they take the, I forget, what are the stops, the curb stops, they take the curb stops and they line them out in the parking lot.
Yeah.
But then you can't use it for the bus turnaround or park there. When we've had them in the last time, we told them, then why don't we just line that section down by the building and then make the other end the turnaround, which they haven't done. But like I said, I mean, Mr. Vitale, if you have any specific issues.
Well, my concern is this, is that, this is a town-used facility for the boys hockey team, and some of the features down there, and some of the conditions down there are just not conducive to running a great program that we have in Tewksbury. And I don't know why the athletic director from the towns of Andover, and Tewksbury, and whoever else uses it, I know Austin Prep was down there playing Lowell Catholic, that they can't get together and say, listen, we're not going to be playing hockey here under these conditions, jointly, to get it fixed, because it's not getting fixed, so.
I don't disagree, and I think the most likely answer is that they're quietly suffering because the alternative is the 4 a.m. practice like Austin, Lowell Catholic has someplace, because they don't have a rink to play. So I think that, however, I agree that, maybe once the season ends, we may want to see if we can get their attention again once the off-season kicks in.
Well, there's 2 rinks there, it's used a lot, there's a junior team that's there, and we have people there, and our players are there, and it's just not maintained as well as it should be for our players and our kids to be using that facility. So I'm hoping that something can get done off-season. I know you don't want to do it now, it's February, and tournament's right around the corner, so hopefully they will do something.
If you pull the file, you'll find all those things.
Okay,
So,
sounds good. Yeah, I'll take a look at it. And,
But they just got dinged by the
Board of Health.
The Board of Health for a few things to deal with, so. All right, any other comments, anybody?
I did hear Mr. Sadwick is staying on board, I heard. That's great news.
Heard that today as well. I think, happy that he's staying, but not, he didn't get to go do what he wanted to do, but it's town's gain. Littleton's loss, I think. So, yep, anything else, anyone? All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion made and seconded, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Good evening.
Plans to sign.